It's episode 337 of The Platformers, a show about games and nerd culture, and I'm your host, Brian Barnett.
I am bartender blue, Chris Cornelise.
Oh, it's my turn. I'm Will Berger. Hi.
I'm Lucas White. And now that free speech is allowed in America again, I want to take a moment to announce that I'm the most powerful Path of Exile 2 player in the galaxy. There are no better Path of Exile 2 players than me. And I will accept any sponsorship offers going forward. And that's completely true and accurate.
Nice.
I believe it.
Thank you.
Still
Can't wait to see your burgeoning powers and feel your presence just surround me.
Definitely did not pay someone else to smurf my character for me.
Nice. Speaking of
Wow,
burgeoning power
story.
Being felt around us all.
Damn, Brian, just say you have an erection. It's fine.
My sister-in-law's Christmas present to me finally arrived, and I'm so excited. Here it is, you guys.
What's in the box?
Unlimited power.
Unlimited power.
It's the goddamn Emperor, guys.
Somehow, Palpatine has returned.
He's got really long fingernails.
He really does. He's got extra hands, so like you can have him from like the scene where he gets introduced, where he's just walking around with his cane. It's just a hand. Yeah,
that's amazing.
And then he's got a couple of different faces. Like he's got the calm one, he's got the friendly one, and then he's got the yes, you'll die. Sick.
Very cool.
It's really good. And my daughter asked me when we opened it, because she knew that was coming, because the one that arrived like actually in time for Christmas was a little Luke Skywalker action figure.
Mm-hmm. Which has graced this podcast before.
Yes, that is true. But the Emperor didn't arrive until today. But my daughter asked me when we were opening it, does the Emperor have a lightsaber? And I was like, no, he doesn't. He doesn't. Because there's no reason for him to have one. He's so powerful, he doesn't need one. And don't look at anything that suggests otherwise. There's no need. Anyways. It's a cold,
in fairness,
cold
the design
day.
of his lightsaber is pretty damn cool, but you know.
Yeah.
After a while, he doesn't need it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's totally superfluous. It's the same reason Yoda doesn't need one. It's like they're beyond that. Anyways. Enough shitting on the prequels. It's a cold, cold day. And it is below freezing. And I will say, overnight here, it's supposed to snow. Between 1 and 5 inches. Which
it snowed in New York today.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's if it snows, which it is supposed to. It has been 5 years since it snowed here. And before that, it was like 10 years. So I'm hoping it snows. Riley really wants to go outside and build a snowman in the morning. And I'm hoping we get to do that, because those were really fun memories every winter for me growing up. So I hope she gets to experience that. And I hope that the grid holds. So fingers crossed.
I was going to say, you got to look up, see if Ted Cruz has bought any plane tickets in the last 24 hours.
My daughter's really wanted to go to Cancun. What a dork. Anyways. Well, I guess since we're talking about politics, Kris, do you want to kick us off this week?
Oh God, what are you setting me up for here?
We don't have to. Oh, Mum Jum in the chat. Okay, I saved you. Mum Jum in the chat saved you from having to immediately do this segue. Mum Jum says, I'm going to create the scene from Hook. I'm going to open the door, yell, it's snowing, and then slam the door. Which is, yeah, that's great. That's great. Man, what a fantastic movie. I was just thinking.
That's a great movie.
That is one of my favorite movies ever. And I've heard, I don't know if this is true, I have heard that like perception of that movie is that it's not very good. I've always loved that movie.
What movie are we talking about?
Hook. I think it's a fantastic Robin Williams performance.
I don't think I have an opinion.
I haven't seen it in like a long time, probably decades.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah,
I think Robin Williams.
a long
and
time.
Dustin Hoffman and oh my god, the guy he's in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. He plays Smee. Oh my god, what is his name? He's also
Bob
in the movie
Hoskins?
with
Bob Hoskins. Yeah.
yeah, Hoskins. Hoskins is great in that movie as well.
Super Mario himself.
That's true. Super
I
Mario.
knew you were going to bring that up. I knew it in my heart.
You know what I was gonna bring
Love
off?
that movie.
You know what I was gonna bring up? I was gonna bring up what was it? Unleashed. The like God, not Jet Li. Was it Jet Li?
It is Jet Li.
Jet Li, yeah, the Jet Li movie where Bob Hoskins has him like on a leash, and then he like unleashes him, and then he just goes feral and just like beats the shit out of everybody. Fun movie, really dumb but fun.
So this reminds me the other day. So my wife works part-time in a movie theater right now, which is funny as an aside because we met working in a movie theater. Anyways, The Goonies was playing the other night, and she texted me like, "Hey, we're showing The Goonies. You want to see if kiddo wants to come see it?" And so I was like, "Oh, well, maybe." And I call him over. I'm like, "Hey, this movie's playing. Do you want to go see it?" And he kind of was like, "I don't know what that is. What is that?" So I showed him the trailer, and he was watching it, and he made this face the whole time.
It's just stone
And
face.
he was just like, "No, thank you."
Kids are so spoiled nowadays. They don't know. They don't know how great The Goonies is.
It's always just funny when you've got those like canonized classic like 80s movies, and
Yeah.
then like someone who wasn't there at the time just completely no sells it. It's very funny to me.
They had their time. This is
Yeah.
our time. Anyways, yeah, very silly. So, all right. So, Kris, do we not want to segue into this game first? Do we want to leave it for later? We don't have to. I just thought it would be a good pivot. Should we save it till later?
I think we should save it till later.
Okay, we'll save it till later.
We really got to warm up to that one.
We'll save it till later.
I have many a thing to say. So
yeah. Okay, we'll save it till later. So I'll jump off this week. I've been playing a lot of Marvel Rivals this week, and let me tell you, this game has got me. This game has got me.
Yeah, finally got you.
There's a theme to the games that I'm going to talk about this week, and that is, do you remember when this thing was really good and fun? We remember. It's like, new releases that capture different eras.
I know where you're segueing
of
with
excellence
this afterwards, and I can also talk about this thing, so it's good.
Indeed, that was my plan. I was going to segue into yours, but first I want to talk about Marvel Rivals because I think that I haven't heard people talk a lot about this. Like, a lot has been made about like, oh, it's a Marvel skinned version of Overwatch. But what I have not seen bandied about is how like they're handling story, which is something that Overwatch never did well. But like the introduction of like little serials, as you do different parts of the story. Like right now, there is a story where vampires are loose in like Central Park or something. And Doctor Strange is a part of trying to like get it all like ironed out. And there's a rumor that maybe Dracula himself is in the mix. And so we're playing through like these different chapters where like over the days they'll release these different like newspaper clippings that have different like headlines and things that kind of insinuate different parts of the story. And then you'll unlock there's like a separate tab for serials where they'll have like several paragraphs of just story. And they've got different comic covers and stuff. And it's really cleanly done. I really like it.
Yeah. And you unlock, it gives you a handful of, every couple of days they unlock new event missions, which are like just long-term, just daily quests and such. If you complete those, you get bonuses, and then you complete a page, and then you get that serial and like a cool art piece and everything. So, and then you get that like, you then get that in your gallery forever, because I just go back and look at some of the pages that I unlocked for the season 0 and such. So you just have those there, and they do tell stories, in addition to, being thematic reasons for the skins and cosmetics and shit that is new and available in the battle pass and what have you.
Yeah.
So it is a pretty good way to do it, and it feels more natural, and like, there is at least a vague theme and story going on here, even if it's not like, it's a comic story, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to be, super amazing or super standout in that regard, given what the game is. But like, yeah. And as you say, it handled it a lot better than Overwatch did and continues to do.
Yeah. My
And
If I
biggest
started playing like tomorrow, would I be able to see all of that? Or you know what I mean?
That is more questionable because I didn't complete all the missions for season 0 because they were a little more exclusive. So I don't have all the pages. I'm not sure if I could go back and like look. I think it might just be the art, and I could go back and read the story, but I don't know at the top of my head.
I do know that
It's,
Or at least for like this season while it's in progress.
when you
Yes.
yes
Or,
yeah
or every mission would be available to you immediately. So if you got on that,
because
you
I
could
just
get
started
that.
very recently and I've completed like the first 3 or 4 pages, so I have all of those.
Yeah, and then you have like the whole thing spans over like 2 months, I want to say.
Yeah.
Something like that, and then they just unlocked a batch every 3 days, but you can still do the old ones. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I do know that the battle passes do follow the although we have our opinions about battle passes, but along that spectrum, this is one of the best of those that I have seen. It's just like Halo Infinite. You buy it. Once you buy it, you can work on it at any time. You don't lose access to any of that. And it's like $10 worth of currency, but if you finish the battle pass, you get like $8 or $9 of currency back. So that seems pretty neat.
It's closer to like $5. It's like you get roughly half of it back.
Oh, it said it costs like 1,000 to buy it, and it said like in the rewards you get like 800.
I don't think it was 800, but maybe I'm just miscounting. So yeah, the first one, like the first season 0 one, was about it was like $5, and it gives you half of that back effectively if you do it all.
Oh, okay,
that's cool.
Yeah, so I've been having a lot of fun with that. It is really, really enjoyable, and it's a great thing to just jump into. And I really like the fact that they have. This is another thing that's going to come back later when Will and I talk about a different game. But they have the ability for people to jump into multiplayer versus bots of different difficulties. So you can literally just jump in without waiting for a queue, and you can just fight some easy bots with other people if you just want to get a feel for different characters. I'm hoping they build out the tutorial a bit more because right now you can't do a training mode for every character. You can just do it for like a small pool of characters. But it's easy enough to go in to like a easy difficulty bot mission and just mess around with those characters and get like a really
and
good
there is a
idea for
practice range as well, which you can just go and figure it out yourself, even if it doesn't have like a stylized tutorial or anything. It's
yeah but yeah, it's good. I'm having a lot of fun with it, and this is definitely one of those things where when I'm not playing fighting games or what have you, like this is something that I want to jump into just because it's bite-sized. Matches do not take that long. They're really easy. The characters are fun and different, and the
queue times are so short.
Yeah.
They are shorter than any game I have ever played.
Yeah.
I don't think I have, like, when waiting for competitive, the longest I have ever had to wait was like 20 seconds in an Australian server.
The longest I've ever had to wait is like 9.
We make jokes when it lasts for 5 seconds. That's how ridiculous it is.
Yeah. It's pretty
like
crazy.
Fucking dead. We've been waiting for 6 seconds. This is a dead game. Everyone's given up. Let's go home.
Yeah.
No, wait, there it is. By the time we're done the joke, we're in the game. It's crazy.
It's really fun. It's really fun. I am going to get into competitive. I need to put together a team for that, but I really want to try that. When you get to the higher levels, you get like ban options. Like both teams will get like 2 character bans that they can put down. And that sounds interesting to me. But that's only at like gold or platinum or higher, something like that. So
yeah, you don't get it at bronze, and I have not played enough competitive to get out of bronze just yet.
Yeah, but yeah, so
I've only played like 3 games of competitive, so yeah.
But I dig it. It's fun. I recommend it. It's really easy to get into.
It's replaced Deadlock as my multiplayer game of choice when I'm just killing time. So
which is great because it's free to play, so there's no excuse.
Yep. It's free to play. You don't need to be specifically invited to it, and the games last a fraction of the time and have a fraction of the wait time to get into. So
yeah, and it's beautiful. Yeah. Like I think these games are just ridiculously beautiful.
And it's fun. It's just real fun.
Anyways, that's all I have to say about that. Will, should we talk about another game that throws us back into a time of yore?
We should. I'm gonna let you run the introduction on this one, but I do definitely have things to say.
Yeah. So, again, let me actually check if it's. I think it's public right now. Yeah. So right now, as part of Steam RTS Fest, which is now through the 27th of January, you can go and get a demo of Tempest Rising, which I have played the multiplayer preview build of, and I'm going to have a preview going live at IGN later this week. And
this is an updated demo from the one they had a little while back, I guess.
Yes.
It's actually got multiplayer, you say?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
It only has multiplayer. Like I haven't done any single player or anything.
Yeah, the first, I think it was the first one, or whenever it was shown off at the Steam Next Fest. I played that, and it was like 2 or 3 PvE missions.
Oh, nice!
And it was like gave me a feel of like, yep, this is a Command and Conquer-esque campaign. So
yes,
I haven't played the multiplayer yet, but I'm keen to.
Guess what? Guess what the multiplayer is?
Command and Conquer-esque.
It's Command and Conquer.
Woo!
It is. Listen, I don't want to be one of those people that we live in an era where most of the games that get made are people being like, man, it's really a shame that nobody makes Burnout anymore. But it's really a shame that nobody makes Burnout anymore. And I guess the development team here was like, you know what? It's really a shame that nobody makes more Command and Conquer. Yeah. And so they were like, what if we did that? And when I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, and beloved they thems, that it is literally Command and Conquer. It is literally Command and Conquer.
Yeah.
They have changed the names and added some unique mechanics here and there. But if you have played Command and Conquer ever, you're going to look at even like the soundtrack has Command and Conquer vibes. You're going to look at this and
I think they actually got Frank Lepaki to do it.
They did. It's the same dude who did the Command and Conquer soundtrack.
Yeah, it's crazy. It is literally just Command and Conquer.
Yeah.
It's Command and Conquer, but there's been 20 years of development in the RTS space since that, and they aren't blind to it.
Yeah. And so when I talked to the developers, they specifically said, we are looking to create a classic 90s and 2000s RTS with modern quality of life enhancements. And that is exactly really what you get.
What they did.
That's what they did.
It's really crazy to me that they just didn't say we really like Command and Conquer.
Yeah.
They don't need to say it, is the thing. I took one look at it. I took a look at the first trailer I saw of it.
Just look at the key art.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, this is Command and Conquer. However,
Command and Conquer and/or Tiberian Sun.
It's funny because they're like, the RTS is the 90s. You might be thinking, as someone who hears that, like, oh, maybe it's like Age of Empires. Oh, maybe it's like a Blizzard RTS. No. This shit is Command and Conquer.
Yeah.
There were 3 schools of RTS. You were Blizzard, you were Relic, or you were
Westwood.
Ensemble.
This is Ensemble is Relic and Ensemble lumped together. So
what makes it that?
I suppose I should say Relic. Relic was like aughts, so I'll come back to that.
I don't know anything about RTSs, so like 3 schools of thought. What is?
Okay, so Blizzard RTS, right? The thing that defines the Blizzard RTS is there are 3 factions, and they are completely different from one another.
Yeah,
they do not overlap.
Mm-hmm.
It also has, a really big emphasis on base building, but also on specifically like workers build buildings. Buildings do not just come down and set up, right?
Yeah.
Workers build buildings. There are 2 resources that you gather in a Blizzard game, always, sometimes 3, or 4 if you go back far enough. And generally you have like a very heavy micro and macro component of the game where it's about expanding, building up your base, but also you have these big armies, right? And if you're playing Warcraft, then you also have heroes. Command and Conquer is weird because it basically takes the worker building base stuff out of it completely. It's like workers gather resources. That's all they do.
Yeah.
There are generally...
And there's one resource.
There's one resource and you have power, which powers your base. That's not a thing in a Blizzard game. It's weird because the entire menu is on the right side of the screen. If you've ever seen an RTS being played competitively, you're probably used to the Blizzard style where the menu is on the bottom.
Yeah.
Like post Warcraft 2.
Yeah.
So the entire menu is on the right side of the screen. You can build stuff from that menu. You don't have to be like, I need to go to my barracks and click on my barracks to build my, infantry unit. No. You just click on the menu.
Yeah.
But it also means everything is unified. So if you have multiple barracks in Warcraft, for example, you can then just go, I got 3 barracks. I'm going to have this one make an orc. Grunt. This one's going to make a troll. This one's going to make an ogre. Cool, done.
Right.
You wouldn't do that in Command and Conquer. You would click on the sidebar. And they would, the more you have of a specific building, the faster it will generate, but it's always just one build queue at a time per type.
Exactly. Command and Conquer is also, I think, more interested in like alternate reality future stuff, whereas Blizzard RTS is like high fantasy, like major sci-fi way removed from like our present reality. Whereas like, in a Command and Conquer style RTS, like there are tanks and jeeps. Right, and that's not to say that you don't have tanks in a Blizzard RTS, but it's very much like this is an analog for a tank. This is an analog for a jeep. That dude is like a Marine Corps sniper, right? Like they're very like built, like set in the real world, a little bit into the future.
Yeah, it was very 20 minutes in the future kind of style, and then it just got a little further, more sci-fi as the series progressed.
The one place uncorrupted by capitalism,
space.
Tim Curry, the goat.
Yeah. That I can't. The best part about that is they had him read that line like a bunch of other times, and that's the take that they used, where he can barely keep it in.
Yeah, it's
you
so
can
good.
See on his face, you can see him break a moment to start chuckling. It's
corpsing right in the camera.
Yeah.
So that is very much the Command and Conquer style of RTS. I think it's
okay.
I don't think it's as competitively geared, honestly, as like a Blizzard RTS is. Like there is multiplayer and stuff, but like I don't think it's as like heavy on this is an extremely competitive game. And the other thing is the factions are generally more similar to each other.
Yeah.
Where it's like
another thing is like about the Blizzard RTS, and I think this is the reason why they lend themselves to the competitive arena more than the others, is that they really distill the different types of units into like very different purposes. So like for the Zerg, there are your cheap disposable troops. Then you have your Hydralisks, which are like more expensive, and their specific purpose is they can attack enemies both on the ground and in the air. Then you have your flying units. Then you have your air superiority unit, and then like that's it. Like you have very limited numbers of very focused things, whereas in Command and Conquer games, like you could have several different flavors of just infantry. You could have like a standard soldier, and then you could have a sniper who like does more damage but from further away, and then you've got like another type of a stuff like that, and then you can get into like specialist units where they'll have special abilities that you'll have to kind of like the hero units from Blizzard games,
but much more limited,
but they're much more limited, one, and two, much more fragile. And so there's like that whole thing. So I feel like that's probably why, is because everything in a Blizzard game is really distilled down to its like most focused essence, whereas these other games have like more kind of nuance, so you can make more different types of choices, but it doesn't really lend itself as well to like really fast-paced like multiplayer action.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is like if your point of reference is the Blizzard RTS, and like frankly, for most people, I think it will be, right? Because StarCraft, right? StarCraft, Warcraft, like going into Command and Conquer for you is going to be confusing because it is very different. Like Brian said, like there's, I think the Tempest Dynasty has like what 8 different infantry units. Right, like it's
8. Yeah, I think it's 8.
8 different infantry units, right? Whereas like in StarCraft, it's like you have Marines and you have like specialized units, right? Marines are your general purpose.
Fire bats,
like fire bats and medics, right? Like the very distinct jobs. Whereas in a Westwood RTS, that is not the case, and so it's a lot more. I don't want to say it's more nuanced, but sometimes you're going to look at this unit and be like, what is the functional purpose of this?
Yeah.
What makes it different than this, right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing because there is a distinction, right? You have to figure out what those are. But it can be a little bit weird if you're used to like this unit serves this purpose, right?
It's not as obvious, so
and
you have to kind of do some experimentation.
Right. And I think like, base building is a little bit less. It's also like more regimented in the CNC type RTS. Like you have to build where you have power, you have to be able to like there's a certain limit on where you can build, and then like a Blizzard RTS that's generally not the case, like unless it's restricted to that race. Like Protoss you have to build on a pylon, Zerg you have to build on creep. Terrans can build wherever they want, which is what makes them good. Whereas like Tempest Rising and Command and Conquer, like you have to build in, for lack of a better phrase, like your sphere of influence, right? And if you don't have that influence out that far, you cannot build there unless you go build another base.
It sounds
so-
tabletop-y.
Yeah, so it's
A
very
little bit.
different. I think it like does not lend itself to competitive play the way the Blizzard RTS does. But they are fun, and there's like they're simultaneously more serious and more campy, which is weird.
And yet they absolutely are. That is the perfect way to describe it.
Yeah,
It's
I
like
don't know how
it's like
else to-
pulpy camp. Yeah.
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 Makes sense.
Whereas like the Blizzard RTS takes itself seriously for the most part, and its jokes are at the margins, right? Where you click on the Marine too much, and how do I get out of this chicken shit outfit, right? Like that's funny. But like in a Blizzard RTS, it's like, why does everybody have a Russian accent, bro? Why is it like comically over the top? Because this is the way that it is, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, if you know Command and Conquer, I think what's interesting is that there hasn't been a proper Command and Conquer game in 20 years, right?
Like
Tiberium,
remasters and like mobile
CNC4.
stuff, right?
Yeah, Red Alert 3 was the most recent actual release, I think. And if you want to get technical, that was its own spin-off of Command and Conquer and kind of played differently, had different vibe. Red Alert was much more leaned heavily into the comic camp kind of thing, whereas Command and Conquer still took itself a little bit seriously.
Oh my god, Red
But the
Alert
last
3 was
one was-
2008.
Yeah, and
I
CNC 4
remember hearing
wasn't
about
even a
that.
CNC game, technically. It was something else they repurposed. But that was the last one we got, and that was like through 2003, 2004, something
Before
like
that,
that.
it was like Renegades and stuff. Just like
Yeah, CNC 3 was like 02, something like that.
Yeah, and so like there hasn't been a proper Command and Conquer game in a really long time.
Westwood has been
And-
gone for like 2 decades.
it's a shame.
Yeah, and the remaster is out there, and I want to, if you're like,
It's a
listening
great
to this,
remaster.
yeah, the remaster is excellent. If you're like, man, Command and Conquer sounds kind of cool, I'd like to go play it. The remaster is out there. I think it came out 4 or 5 years ago at this point.
Yeah, it was 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good. It's really well made. It's one of the best. I reviewed it when it came out. It's one of the best remasters I
Same.
think I've ever seen. And
Like $20 on Steam.
yeah, it's $20. It regularly goes on sale, and it has the original Red Alert, all 3 expansions for both of those.
And a whole bunch of like basically every mission that has ever been made for those in any kind of port or standalone or demo disc or anything is available there with a whole bunch of extras.
Yeah, so it's quite good. I'm
Worth
still
it for the
hoping-
music alone.
Yes, the jukebox feature is excellent, which is also in Tempest Rising.
Yes, which
hell
is
yeah.
cool.
Which is very cool. But I would definitely recommend the collection, and I hope that one day they will get to do a second one that has Tiberian Sun and Red Alert 2 in it,
Which are the
Yeah.
best.
which are the best ones.
Yeah, those are my favorites.
Yeah, I was more
I
of a
think-
Tiberian Sun guy than Red Alert, but
Yeah, Red Alert 2 is probably my favorite, but I massively respect Tiberian Sun, and I like the Command and Conquer branch of story more. So, for
Yeah.
what it's worth,
Yeah,
still
but
no
anyways-
StarCraft in any regard. But like,
This is not an
I love
ad
Command and
for Command and Conquer, although it kind of is. But
If you're talking about Tempest Rising,
you have to talk about
Yeah.
Command and Conquer.
Yeah.
you have to, especially given that again, it's been 2 decades. Plenty of people listening to this aren't going to be that familiar or have that kind of memory
sure.
or have played the stuff recently.
for sure, unless they are old heads like us. But anyways,
Yep.
the fittingly, as we were talking about, Tempest Rising is also set in an alternate history where the Cuban Missile Crisis went really badly and ended up leading into World War III.
Okay.
Oops.
So after the nuclear irradiation of much of the world, these flowering vines started sprouting up from the ground. And these flowers have a lot of electrical energy in them. So if people are willing to brave the nuclear wastes to harvest them, hey, there's more power for you, buddy. So that's what the Tempest is.
Yep.
The Tempest Dynasty is Asian nations and Eastern European nations allied together, and the GDF, which is the Global Defense Forces, is Canada, the United States, and Western Europe. So those are two of the three factions. The third one is going to come up in the campaign, and I believe they are going to announce that that it's coming like as part of like the first year of support for the game, which they've already committed to a year of support. And I should tell you, like the old Command and Conquer games, this is a boxed product. You do not need an internet connection to play this game. You can play it on LAN with people and stuff like that. You can also play by yourself against bots. And there's stuff which I was hoping to get to do in the pre-release build, but it is not added yet, but to team up with your friends against like hard bots and stuff.
Good old comp stomps.
In custom rooms in the future, which by the way, I will say, I don't know how much you did of like the bot games in Skirmish, but I find the AI in this game to be pretty good.
Yeah, I think the normal AI is actually quite good.
They did hit and run stuff. They
you.
did like harrying stuff. They like were definitely trying to bait me into attacks. I was like, I don't think I've seen an AI play like this in an RTS before.
It's pretty rare. I think
typically they just show up at your base with a ton of guys and just steamroll you.
Yeah, it has happened, but the AI is very good, and you know, it's one of those situations where like, if you want to play this game, because there is no campaign right now and there really isn't a tutorial, you just kind of have to figure out like, okay, this faction does this, and this is the way that their power consumption works. So this is how they build things, right? Like,
yeah.
You're just gonna have to sit there and play it, and I think I mean, it's, you know, it's like well made. Obviously, it's good. It's very pretty. Like it has a lot of depth to, I think, where you build what and what your build order is and what units you're using. But I do think it's a little bit like, if you haven't played a Command and Conquer game before and you're like, Tempest Rising sounds cool, just know that like if you download this demo, the first few times you're probably gonna get your butt kicked while you figure out like what things do. And that's pretty normal RTS experience, but just be aware that that's there, right? Like it's not, you know, yeah, it's not very interested in teaching you at the moment.
Yeah, whereas the PvE demo that I played back in the Next Fest that was a little better in terms of tutorial, so maybe they'll reintegrate that at some point.
Yeah.
I imagine this is their focus on testing at the moment, because it's still not out till like April, right? Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's coming out April 24th.
Cool.
Yeah. So
I've had my eye on
two
this
campaigns.
one for sure.
There are 11 replayable missions each, focused on both the GDF and the Tempest Dynasty, which I lean towards. Tempest Dynasty is the faction I like playing as.
Peace through power. Kane lives in death.
Because of the way that they have fewer units and fewer buildings than the GDF, but they're more flexible, which I like.
Mm-hmm.
So like, instead of normally like Will was talking about earlier, you have to like build a base and then build a refinery and then build like harvesters to go to the resource and then to the refinery to get it. The Tempest Dynasty, they just build a vehicle called the Tempest Rig, and then you drive it over to a field of Tempest and just plant it, and then the wheels come off and they're little cars that go out and scoop up the Tempest and bring it back to you. And when that field is depleted and all the resources are gone, you can just pack up and drive it someplace else. It's really easy. You don't have to have any power there. You don't have to have an established base there. It's easy.
Sounds like Yuri and Red Alert 2.
Yeah, they upgrade their units, and they also have something called distribution mode for their power facilities, where they can deal damage to the surrounding buildings and get a boost to how fast they create units or how fast those buildings attack, because upgraded units in the Tempest Dynasty have like cannons on them, which is pretty cool. They've also got like plans that you can enact. There's the Marshall Plan, the Logistics Plan, and I forget the last one, but basically one of them makes building stuff cheaper. One of the plans makes harvesting stuff faster, so like you make money faster, and the other one, the Marshall plan, makes it so your enemies or your units attack faster and have resistance to explosives. So like there's a 30-second cooldown between those, but all you need to do is have a little bit of power overhead, which you're gonna have anyways if you're like continuing to build out your base. I found it really fun to get in a rhythm of like, all right, I need more money. I'm going into like resource building mode, enact that plan. I'm just going to gather as many resources as I can. All right, now I'm going to build up. So I'm going to switch to the one that makes everything cheaper. And then, all right, now it's time for us to go to attack. I'm going to switch to the Marshall plan. We're going to attack faster and all this sort of stuff. I found that to be really fun. And I also like doing like, there's a fun vehicle called the salvage van, and it repairs stuff around you. But I don't know, Will, did you use this?
No, but this sounds hilarious.
Yeah. So you can switch. There's an upgrade in the doctrines, which are like the skill trees, where you can add new functionality to it. But initially, the salvage van can deploy into a building anywhere, and then it will just salvage vehicles that are nearby, no matter who they belong to, and give resources to the player who salvaged them. So what I love doing is catching people.
Real Supreme Commander right now. Yeah,
catching people unawares. If they've got just some forces sitting someplace, I'm gonna drive my salvage van up behind their tanks, just park it there, and after like a couple of seconds of being there, all their tanks just disappear, and I get those resources. So I'm getting richer, and they're losing their, some of their forces. And if you go down the tech upgrade for plans, I think it's plan, or it might be the vehicle one in the middle. You get the ability to, once it's turned into a building, you can just turn it back into a van and then just drive off. It's awesome. So yeah, that's a lot of fun. There's also like different abilities that you can have where you can like call down a little drop pod that has like a healing aura around it that you can use during combat. Like the GDF has stuff like, they're more focused on control and like debuffs and buffs and like marking enemies and then getting bonuses against marked enemies. They can like shut down enemy buildings and stuff, and they can make like spy drones and things. They're still fun. It's just I slightly prefer the way that the Dynasty does things, and I'm excited to play the third faction because it seems like they're going to be maybe more mystic and subterranean stuff like that. So I always vibe with like the fucked up little dudes from Underground.
The third faction in those games is usually the most like removed.
Yeah.
So.
I played Undead in Warcraft 3. Like I played Zerg in StarCraft. But I like playing the weirdos.
I played Orcs and then I played Zerg.
Yeah. But yeah, it's good. It's good. It's really good. I can't wait to play more. I'm really excited about what the campaign is going to be like. So in the opening cinematic, I don't know if you watched the whole thing, Will, but it's like there's like a little taste of cheese in there.
Yes. With
like the way that the scientist is talking to those soldiers.
Yes. 100%, yeah.
There is definitely some cheese in there. I'm hoping I don't expect there to be like live action stuff, but I'm hoping we get more of that cheese because that is definitely part and parcel for games of that era and of that genre. So I'm excited.
Command & Conquer lived and died on its FMVs. It was the best.
And the game, so the game is set. It's set in the alternative history of like the follow up of the Cuban Missile Crisis, but the game is set in '97. So it's like.
So it's been 30 years in that time. Yeah.
Yeah. So I maybe we'll get I don't know, we'll get some weird stuff. I imagine. Yeah, it's very obvious that this is a labor of love, I think the quality shines through. It feels like putting on a comfortable old glove. Like I went in, like what Will said about like the game not getting you in if you're new to the genre. That is true, but if you are familiar with the genre, I jumped right in and was like, oh, I'm like right at home. Like this is everything is exactly where I expect it to be. things are like every once in a while I'll happen upon like a unit that does something interesting that I hadn't seen before. But yeah, it's very like it's a new one of those. It's not very often.
We're right on the cusp of like an RTS just kind of resurgence because like a lot of there hasn't been a big AAA one since StarCraft 2 finished, basically. You had Age of Empires 4, you had Homeworld 3, Company Heroes, whichever one they're up to, all kind of middling, and most of the biggest releases have just been remasters or glow ups of old ones, and also the worst ones, Hello Warcraft 3, or simultaneously both. But we've reached the point where a lot of indie devs and AA teams have just gone, fine, we'll do it ourselves.
Yeah.
And we're seeing the fruits of that really start to foster a lot. Like, Will and I didn't have the greatest things to say about Stormgate, but at the time, but I am still interested to see how it develops, how it fleshes out. You got Tempest Rising. There's other games like Dwarf and Zero Space that I'm keeping an eye on, and they look great. It's hopefully we'll get our RTS, itch scratched a little bit.
Yeah. And this is by Stormgate, not Stormgate.
Westwood, Blizzard, Relic, Ensemble, one of those.
Slipgate Studios, which is one of the studios that worked on Ghost Runner.
Ironworks.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm even more interested because Ghost Runner was slapped.
Yeah. So it's good. I pretty much only have good things to say about it. I'm excited to see when it's like a full product with like everything fleshed out and like there's all the different modes available. I'm sure Will and I will be talking about it on the show when the full version comes out.
I'll be there. Don't worry.
And I'm excited. I'm excited for that. But yeah, as of now, you can go on Steam and get it. And I've tested it on Steam Deck. It runs great. So just get your little mouse, whatever. At least that's what I do. I'm sure you could probably play it with controller, but I haven't done it.
I would not recommend it.
I would never ever recommend RTS.
I never play RTSs with controllers. But I'm sure there's some sick out there.
Some exist and some can be done, but like
not the way I do it.
There were Nintendo 64 ports of StarCraft. I don't know why to this day.
Oh my god, yeah.
It's terrible.
On PlayStation as well.
Yeah.
Awful. Just terrible. Don't
do
that.
But it's worse. It's so much worse on N64 because think of the controller. Think of the N64 controller. You can see one over there in the background held by Chibi Terasu. Now imagine playing StarCraft on that shit.
Terrible. Don't do it. Save yourself some heartache.
The nice thing is that all the N64
crazy ports back in the day
missions have been ported to PC now, so you can play them.
Yeah,
that's nice. Any final thoughts about this, Will, before we move on to something else?
It is a great time to be an RTS fan, and if you're looking for RTS games to play, there's a ton of stuff on the RTS Fest on Steam. So definitely go, play some demos. I recommend EXO. Homeworld's great. Halo Wars is great. Age of Empires is great. There's that new Dune one, which I haven't played yet, which is supposed to be really good. But there's a ton of stuff on there. Definitely play Tempest Rising too while you're at it. And if you like it, check out that Command & Conquer collection. You could do a lot worse.
Oh yeah. Speaking of Dune, Mumjum in the chat says the more you talk about this game, the more I just hear the Dune 2, Dune 2000 game.
That's the same thing.
Which I did not.
Okay.
Well, there's a slash in there. So I don't know. What you wanted to call it.
Dune 2 is like the basis for the entire modern RTS genre.
And it was made by Westwood, the Command & Conquer guys.
Oh, there you go.
Westwood has worked. Everything comes from there. So
yeah. Also, another game that's on the Steam RTS Fest sale right now at 50% off is a game that Kris and I have talked about before, which is Against the Storm.
Oh yes, very good game. If you're into city builders, give that a shot.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, it is a good time to be an RTS fan. Lucas.
At loss.
What do you got?
Okay. So one of the games I want to talk about is called Blade Chimera.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I know about this one, and
yeah.
I'm very jealous of Lucas. Lucas has gotten to play it, and I haven't gotten to play it yet. Fuck you, Lucas. Anyway, go ahead.
So Blade Chimera is made by a team called Team Ladybug.
Oh,
And I start mentioning the dev because they'd been doing really interesting things in
They did-
Metroidvanias for a
they
few
did
years now.
Record of Lodoss War, Deedlit, and Wonder Labyrinth, which is really good.
Yes, 100%.
They've also done some of the
So
Momodora games, right?
Yeah, that's another thing I was thinking of.
no, I
Maybe
don't
not
believe
actually.
so.
Oh no, sorry.
So
That's under the publisher arm. Never mind. Steam took me to the wrong place.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
that was where my mind went as well, Chris. That's bomb service.
yeah. So I believe they're at 4 games now. One of them is not a Metroidvania, but their first Metroidvania was Toho Lunar Nights.
Lunar Nights, yeah.
Something like that. Lunar Nights. Second game was Deedlit Wonder Labyrinth. So these are 2 fan games, and I was trying to look at the like rights situation because the publisher Playism has a long history of doing really interesting things and putting out games that probably would not be published otherwise because they'll be putting shit out there that's like
Play Dragon is dead.
these people,
Oh,
or
yeah.
like stuff like these people made this game on RPG Maker for like a contest on a manga website, and we published it in English on the Nintendo Switch because fuck
'Cause we
you, that's,
can.
that's why, yeah. So they got these people making these fan games that are based on IP that I assume got some kind of licensing deal afterwards or something. Especially Lodoss War, that's like that's a IP
That's an
that's been around
institution
for decades.
in Japan for sure.
Yeah. So Blade Chimera is they're kind of like, well, we did these 2 fan games and kind of built up a following, so let's do our like own thing now. So it's like a fully original game. It's a sci-fi kind of post-apocalyptic. I hesitate to say cyberpunk, but it's got kind of that vibe to it. And the whole premise is like people started turning into demons, kind of like a zombie outbreak, except like they were transforming into like stuff from like folklore or whatever. Um, this is an aside. There's like really cool lore stuff where it's like their skin changed, but it looks like they're wearing clothes, and it's like stuff in fucking fairy tale. But it's like they like acknowledge goofy shit that you wouldn't expect them to,
They just
acknowledge as
lean
part of the
into it.
storyline. Yeah. Um, but like one of the I think one of the things that you notice about these games, like first and foremost, is just how nice they look. They're 2D. As far as I can tell, it's pixels. And they just look amazing. And you approach one of these games and it's like, oh, this is an indie game. And you look at it and you're like, how the fuck did they afford to make a game that looks and moves like this? You look at Wonder Labyrinth and it looks like somebody made Symphony of the Night, but like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks really good.
Just that level of animation. You can see the frames kind of like waving into each other, and it's just really amazing looking. And Blade Chimera is just a step further. One of the ways in particular is like it really plays with lighting in a way that just blows my mind to look at because you can't tell like uh, in my head it's like either they took the time to draw all of this or there's like shenanigans going on where there's like an actual lighting engine doing and stuff, but like I don't know how to tell. I don't know, but like the character has a glowing demon sword thing and like you can see it like casting green light back onto the character. um if you like walk past a light, your guy will like cast a shadow on the wall behind him. There's situations where like the lighting in a room will change significantly and it just like it hits everything in a way that just like I'm not used to seeing in a game that's 2D pixels. You would expect that from something that's more obviously like, oh, there's a lighting engine happening, and usually you can like tell, like a in like an Octopath Traveler or something like
Yeah, I was
this. But
about to
here
say
it's like
2D
it
HD.
looks like that shit's drawn into the pixels. So however they did it, it looks amazing. And then like gameplay wise, it's kind of follows that Igavania, um, Symphony of the Night structure where it's like you've got your melee weapon, and you kind of mash the attack button, and he'll swing it a couple of times or whatever. It's nothing complicated. Um, but there's like a lot of different weapon types, and then there's guns, and they all have different properties and like aiming and auto aiming, and it's just like it's really simple, but also like really well thought out, and it like works really well. Um, I don't like saying polish, but I end up falling on it anyways because it's just makes things easier. But it just feels really good to play. So just like in terms of like production value, this game is just super impressive. Um, and then like it's not like it's pretty short. Its map is more like functional than explore it. It's not like it's not like a Metroid
It's
or
not
like a Hollow
labyrinthine or
Knight or
anything.
something. Yeah, it's not like you're going back and forth and like opening new pathways and stuff. It's like it kind of guides you through it linearly, and then backtracking is about like secrets and like filling in checklists and stuff. Um,
It's
and
Metroid
it's
Dread
up
as
as
opposed to Super Metroid. Got it.
yeah, kind of, except maybe even more simple.
Okay.
Um, I had a point of reference and I completely lost it, but it's not important. So it's like it's not massive and expansive and like super expertly drawn out, but it's very, very well presented and very nice to look at, and it feels good to play. Um, and so it's just like one of those games where you're playing it and it's like 8 hours or whatever, and it just melts away. Um, and it's got like really cool music. The story's kind of boilerplate, but it's like told in a fun way. Um, but it's just like this developer exists in this really specific space in this genre that's way overcrowded. Uh, and it's weird because like I look at it, I'm like, man, there's a lot of things that can be done better, um, and like things that it's missing compared to bigger and maybe more elaborate and perhaps even better thought out games. Um, like I've been doing some post game stuff and having trouble because like it doesn't really keep track of information for you the way a lot of games do. Like I'm trying to collect these gimmicks. I've got 4 left, and I have no idea what the fuck to like. There's nothing in the game that's gonna help me do that. That kind of thing. But at the end of the day, like I had played it, and I was like, holy shit, this rules, and I gave it like a 9. Um, so it's like the parts of it that are strong are so strong that it's like impactful despite its you know on paper problems, I guess you could say.
So go into it
Um,
knowing what it is, and you will have an excellent time with what is there, but don't go
yeah,
in expecting like Hollow Knight or anything.
yeah, and like it's really effective, I think, because of the way it looks and plays, and the vibes or whatever you want to call it. It's playing a Metroidvania. I feel like um, it's a very like dialed in kind of thing for me, where it's like, man, I'm like super aware this is a video game, right? And I'm like checking the map. I'm thinking about upgrades and like when I'm gonna run into certain things, and then like I'll play a Team Ladybug game, and it just like washes over me the whole time, and like the obvious like, oh, I'm playing a Metroidvania, like doesn't hit my brain as hard, if that makes sense. Uh, they're like very,
You
very
hit the
like
flow state a
experiential
lot
kind of thing.
easier.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's really cool, especially because like otherwise I'm kind of over Metroidvanias at this point, even though I enjoy them. these ones
They are
just
the go-to, one of the genres of the indie and AA dev just to flock toward.
exactly. It's like I like my Castlevanias and going back to those. But then like another one will come out. I'll just be like, okay, sure. But these ones are like, oh shit, like I'm in and out. They look awesome. They're fun to play. And it's just like, damn, this felt good to experience. And that feels like a standout quality that a lot of these other games don't have.
Nice.
Yes.
So I would highly recommend Blade Chimera. Definitely recommend Deedlit.
Yeah.
That's a
I do
little
too.
more. Yeah, it's like nichey. Like if you don't know Lodos War, you'll be a little confused about what it's doing with the story, but it still does some cool stuff.
Yeah. I still had
but
fun.
Then,
Yeah.
yeah, the Toho game, that's like a rabbit hole. I don't know if I would recommend fucking with Toho unless you're like, you know.
I've tried to delve
But yeah.
that. I don't know if I regret it or not, but I try to keep
It's-
away from it for a good reason.
Yeah, same.
This is one of the classic Lucas White beware warnings.
Yeah.
This
I don't
way
even know if
lies
it's
madness.
I want to clarify.
I think it's
'cause
like
I
a
said
better
played-
kind of madness because it's not like 2015 Vita game with anime characters madness. You know what I mean? It's like
true.
That is
it's
a
a more
very
It's not
family
Galgun,
friendly kind of
basically.
madness.
Ooh.
Yeah, exactly. My understanding is Toho is not degenerate. It's just a lot.
Yeah, it is a
So
rabbit
do with
hole.
that what you will. Yeah. But the other two games are much more like approachable, and Blade Chimera is not attached to an IP at all. It's just something you can check out. But yeah, really, really, really cool game. I think really shows that like this team has something that it is like bringing to the table that's unique or distinct, and they seem to be being rewarded for it, and that's cool to see.
Good.
I want to clarify really quickly because I said play Dragon is Dead while Lucas is talking. Dragon is Dead was not developed by Team Ladybug and not published by Playism. It's just a very cool indie game that I got to play like within the last few months. And him talking about Blade Chimera made me think about Dragon's Dead. So Dragon's Dead is Team Sunny and PM Studios.
That's what we saw at PAX, right?
Yes, it reminds me. What he's talking about with Blade Chimera reminds me of Dragon is Dead. So
yeah,
play Dragon is Dead.
I do want to check that out. So we'll
cool.
allow it on the record.
All right. Now, we're going to pivot over to Will because I want to hear about Synduality.
Synduality Echoes of Ada. So
explain
I can
to
talk
me
about
this shit
because it's a weird title, and I'm not really sure what it has to do with anything so far. And there is no embargo for this, which is wonderful because they gave us the codes basically at early access. So Synduality Echoes of Ada is a extraction shooter, but you're in a mech. And it takes place in kind of like a post-apocalyptic future where humanity lived underground for a while because the rain is basically acid and it will kill you. And even when you're in your mech, it will eat away at your mech slowly.
Some Death Stranding vibes.
So you're out in the world. You are trying to like scavenge. You are what's called a drifter. You're trying to scavenge parts and resources to kind of help humanity survive. And you can also kill other people and take their stuff. So it's a mech game, which is cool. It is not as fast as Armored Core. It's more like Titanfall-y, like maybe Mech Warrior kind of speed. It's not as fast. It is not in other ways like Titanfall. But you do not get out of the mech. But so you have like basically your AI person that helps you out. I have yet to see anybody who has not made a woman in the game.
Par for the course.
Including
Speaking
myself,
of
I was like, oh, this seems like a fun personality. It was one of the women. who's helping you out and helping you pilot this thing. And I died one time to a mob because I wasn't paying attention. I forgot how to heal, which felt really bad. But if you die, you lose all your stuff. So it's kind of Sea of Thieves-y extraction shooter where you go out and you're risking everything that you're taking with you. And the goal is to like improve your mechs, get new mechs, build up a base. There are allegedly single-player missions. I have not unlocked them yet after a few hours of playing because mostly it's like, make your base better, right? So you go out into the world, and it's like, all right, we need you to get these pieces to, put a floor in this little cave that you've basically got. We need you to kill X number of things, right? We need you to go find, explore this area and get it all back to the underground area where you live without dying. And while you're out there, if the rain starts up, hey, you start losing like your rain shield, and when that goes down, you start taking health damage. Also, everybody that you run into is potentially hostile because they can kill you and take your stuff.
Including NPCs?
Yes.
Oh wow.
If you run into NPCs, they will try to kill you. There are no friendly people that is like not your little AI companion, right? Other people tend to be pretty friendly in my experience. I've never actually had anyone try to shoot at me. I've run into a lot of other people. Usually we like wave at each other from our mechs and then go on our separate ways because nobody wants to lose their stuff, right? It's still early in the game. It's only been on a couple days. But that's not to say it doesn't happen because I've definitely looked at like the bounty board for people who are out there killing, and the bounties are pretty high. So there are definitely people out there killing. I have not run into anybody yet.
There will always be the PvPers out there. That's just a par for course for these games. Some people will just steer clear, focus on loot, clear PvE stuff, and other people are like, no, I'm killing you, taking your shit.
No, as a Sea of Thieves player, like whose sole goal playing that game was to cause problems, I respect it. But so far, it is pretty good. You go out, you look for stuff, you find stuff, you fight like these weird flora and fauna that are out there. And you're upgrading your mech. Your new parts, new weapons. You're upgrading your AI companion, and you're kind of mapping the area, right? So it's like, oh, I know that this item typically, is over here. Or this thing that I need to go kill typically appears in this area, right? So I don't have like very firm thoughts on it so far, other than it is very tense whenever like you hear another mech moving around you, and you're like, you gonna shoot at me? And it feels good to play, and the world is really beautiful and really interesting. So I think it's just come out. It's pretty cool so far. Again, I haven't really done any of the single player stuff yet because I don't think I'm far enough in terms of what I've gotten. But it is I'll be playing it some more tonight. But it is interesting in terms of like a take on the extraction shooter where like you're in a big robot. Yeah, that's cool. And I think it does a really good job of like forcing you to manage a bunch of systems where it's like you can go fast, but then you'll overheat, then you can't go fast anymore. That's not good. Or like, how much ammo are you going to bring out with you? Because if you run out of ammo, you're going to have a bad time, right?
But if you die with lots of ammo, then you don't have that ammo.
Then you don't have that ammo, right? What kind of weapons are you going to use? How are you going to take them out? Do you want to buy insurance on this run? And get all your stuff back for a fraction of its cost? Or are you like, fuck it, we'll do it live. Like we're gonna come back from this one, right? How do you like load out your AI? You can choose different variants of its personality. It's like, are you gonna make it good at finding creatures? Are you gonna make it good at like recognizing threats from other mechs? Are you gonna make it good at resource gathering? Are you gonna make it so it can just throw up a shield for you from the rain? There's a lot of different stuff here, and I think it's pretty interesting. It is. I don't know. I don't know what I expected out of it. It's weird and it's unique and like it's very fun when like two people are just sitting under like a bridge to stay out of the rain and you're just kind of looking at each other like,
we cool? We cool?
Were we good? I have a shotgun. I see that you have an assault rifle and we are 10 feet from each other. I want you to recognize what's going to happen here. So I think it's really cool. Again, I don't know much beyond like the opening core conceit of like go out, find stuff, build your base, but it does make you make interesting decisions. And when you sit there waiting for the elevator to bring you back underground to your area for 30 seconds, it is stressful. When you see another mech, it is stressful. And there are also like mechs that are computer controlled. So as you're looking at a mech, like from a distance, it's not immediately obvious like, is that a computer or is that a person? So it does a pretty good job of that, and I'll have more updates on it as I play more of it. But I think it's pretty interesting. It's what I've been playing most of the day. So
Now you have
And
my
over the
attention
weekend.
for sure.
Yeah, and it's you know, like a game where you can customize your AI girlfriend. It is very horny.
The
After
horny
call.
age. The horny age continues.
Yeah, so Brian is feasting, and I'm just kind of like,
I
okay.
noticed I have like YouTube on in the background a lot when I'm working, and around the holidays there were ads for this constantly, and they all had this really weird tone. So I had a really hard time telling what the deal with this game was. I'm wondering if it like does it have like comedy vibes to it at all, or was that just ads being stupid?
There is some parts of it. I think it depends on like what AI you choose, because mostly you're like, so far in my experience in the first several hours, you're mostly just interacting with your AI. It's like, oh hey, we're clearing out this area. We're gonna eat some more weeds because we don't have any food. We can cook these weeds. And you know, if your AI is like a nice AI, they can be like, I know that you don't like this, but we got to do it. And if your AI is like kind of like the give you a hard time AI, they're like, listen, you need to eat your veggies, and if you don't, I'm gonna kick the shit out of you. Like we don't have money for real food. You gotta suck it up. So,
Oh God, what's the
I mean,
the thing that Spike says? Like this is or Jess says like, oh, we got beef and
what is
broccoli
it?
or beef and veggies for
No, it's bell peppers and beef.
yeah, bell peppers and beef.
There we
We're
go.
short on the beef. We don't have money for beef, Spike. You know. Yeah, it's good stuff.
So it's kind of like that. That doesn't appear much. Mostly you're just out in the world or like, you know, doing stuff at your base. There is a monetization component to it that I'm not a fan of so far. You know, has a battle pass and stuff, but
Is it free to play? Like
I don't.
beyond the realm of
It
early access?
is not on Steam. It's like $40, I think, is
Yeah,
conversion.
it. Yeah, it's
It's also
let me
sitting
look
at
here.
mixed, like 51% on Steam. So apparently a lot of technical issues, serviceability stuff. But
I have not had any issues
I
with
only
that.
skimmed, so yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I have not had any problems with that, but I believe that is there. I've had a little bit of chugging. But it is very grindy too. So
It's kind of inevitable with the extraction shooter.
yeah, it's like, hey, don't you want this new thing? It's like, well, you better grind for it. It's like, but I just want. Can I just go to the new area and like get a new floor to sleep on?
It almost makes you think of Freedom Wars. So I also just played that recently, but
Yeah.
very different type of game.
Yeah.
Well,
So
keep us posted. I'm definitely curious.
yeah, I will keep you guys posted. So far, I'm having a decent time.
I know TMO likes it, and that's not a reliable.
It's not an
barometer.
endorsement.
Much love to TMO, but I can never tell what that guy is gonna like or not.
Not here to defend himself, and you just gotta throw him right under the bus.
He knows I adore him.
That's okay.
It's Timo. His home is under that bus.
Yeah.
Timo likes the single player stuff, but my understanding is that the two things do not meet in twain. Like the single player missions that you do get you a preset loadout, and you don't really take anything back with you. So
that's weird.
Yeah, it's my understanding. Again, I haven't gotten there yet. I can't say for sure, but like the core gameplay loop is fun. It just seems very grindy, just right off the bat.
Which yeah, not a huge fan of, but we'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see what happens. Kris, I have a question for you before I decide where we're going next.
Sure.
Are you going to talk about the main thing that I know you're talking about, or are you also going to talk about the extra stuff? What are you feeling in this moment?
Oh, it's so difficult because there's one game I really want to gush about, but I also want to keep my powder dry for Goatee. So I'd like
Ooh, okay. I did not anticipate
Keep your
this.
powder dry, because I think I know what game you want to talk about, and I haven't played it yet. Keep your powder
Yeah.
dry.
Guilty.
Well,
I will just simply throw out. Go ahead.
okay. Then we'll just quickly do.
I'll touch
the,
on that and move on to the other game I just
Yeah.
played,
Yeah.
which is
Okay.
less
quickly,
immediately relevant.
And I'm gonna hold you to quickly. If you're not done talking about this game in 4 minutes, I'm gonna start yodeling.
Yeah.
I'm gonna touch on.
I think you now have to do it for 4 minutes and 1 second because I gotta hear Will yodel. I have to hear it.
I will be obnoxious and then I will yodel.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mentioned last week that I started 1000X Resist. Was very early on.
Let's go.
Didn't know that much about it. Probably made myself sound like, I know for a fact I made myself sound like an idiot once I eventually knew what was going on. But I finished it in the last week. I am not going to say much more aside from that I fucking adored it, and you will be hearing heavily about it in the Goatee episode. Done.
No yodeling required. Love that for me.
Yeah.
But I can then immediately segue onto something else that I can talk about at greater length.
Yeah.
So, in the wake of both 1000X Resist and Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, which played recently as well, thought it was good, I was on a puzzle kick. Like puzzle, visual novel, that kind of thing. So I'm just like, what can I play? And then Brian happened to remind me about the existence of one game, which he mentioned in comparison to Lorelei. I'm like, you know what? I do have that lying around on Steam.
Which I love. Yeah.
Yes. And I have been recommended this since its first release on the DS. And never got around to it until just now. So I played, I'm going to get the name completely wrong.
Oh, it's so easy.
The order of operations, though, but it is 999.
Yes.
So
9 hours, 9 persons, 9 doors. How do I know
That's
this? I've never played this game.
I was never sure if it's, which order comes first, but there you go.
It's persons, hours, doors. Yeah.
Okay.
That's literally what I just said.
The top of the Zero Escape trilogy.
Yes.
That's it.
Game rules.
It does, in fact, rule. I thoroughly enjoyed my playthrough of it. So, yeah.
What an excellent game. The DS had so many bangers on it, and
it really did.
9 hours, 9 persons, 9 doors. This video game is from 2009 and is almost old enough to vote, just so you know.
Yeah.
It's great.
I mean, it can vote in Australia, but...
Yeah, there you
go. Yeah, so... Can it? Fuck, I don't know. Suddenly I'm doubting myself. Never mind. 999.
Doesn't matter.
So... in terms of puzzles and everything, like I went in right off the back of Lorelei. I like 999 better than Lorelei, and this helped me contextualize why Lorelei I really liked, but didn't quite click. And that is Lorelei has better puzzles. Lorelei is better designed as a big puzzle game, as a big kind of like lots and lots of puzzles all linked in this one place that becomes like a massive kind of escape room sort of thing, as opposed to much smaller escape rooms and puzzles in between the story sections. 999 sells it because I like the characters, I like the plot, I like the developments, I like the different branching paths and how it all plays out, and I really liked the twist and all the build up into the final route and how that ended. I thought that was super satisfying.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I ended up that's probably why, again, Lorelei and Laser Eyes is a great game, but it's a great game. 999 is a better story. And I think I enjoy that more.
Yeah, 999 is a really big deal in terms of like I want to say like modern history of visual novels.
Definitely, I can see that.
Yeah, a lot of games that came out then were like, we want to do visual novels, but like because of XYZ reasons, we have to incorporate gameplay, because if it doesn't have gameplay, then it's not a real video game and people won't buy it. Because visual novels aren't real games and they're for like horny weirdos, right?
It's the perception of a lot of people, yeah.
Play variable barricade.
And 999 is one of the games that like really kind of broke that barrier.
By actually having gameplay that integrated the story and everything as well.
Yeah. Plus just being such a good story. really kind of like overshadowing even the puzzles, I think.
Definitely.
As much as the puzzles were, you know, relevant.
Solid,
then, like,
mostly enjoyable.
yeah. And then like the sequel would go on to like play with format more.
I've heard each
Yeah.
of the subsequent 2 games are very
Yeah.
different in that regard. So
Mhm.
Brian has spoken positively about Virtue's Last Reward to me, and I'll probably get to that soon because it
Yeah.
comes bundled with $9.99 on the Steam version that I have.
Yeah.
And then people are a lot more mixed about the third one, but
Yeah.
Virtue's Last Reward is one of, so I have like a pantheon that I kind of keep mentally of like games that I basically don't have any problems with. Like my like these are 10s and these are like 10 ass 10s. And Virtue's Last Reward is on that list.
all right.
That game was instrumental in people being like, oh, actually, we can just fuck with visual novels. Like, we don't need a billion puzzles to like justify, you know, stories. And so, like, right after that, you just had like actual visual novels coming out and being, you know, well received. And I think those 2 games were a big part of that.
In fact,
sure.
I don't
Alongside,
know
like,
that we
Ace
would
of
have
Planet.
gotten I don't know that we would have gotten Doki Doki Literature Club without this. Without
Hell,
the Zero
you could
Escape
argue
stuff.
we wouldn't even have gotten the Fast and X Resist without this.
Maybe.
Because it's, you know, it's visual novel with walking aspects and light platforming, very light platforming. So yeah.
And Doki Doki is one of those games I'm like principally opposed to because it's like, oh, we can do this better than the wacky weirdo Japanese people, and we're subverting the genre and we're doing things that have never been done before that actually totally have been done before. So I hate that game, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. It got the broad appeal so that people who don't have your bona fides can experience it, I suppose. If we want to be charitable, which we don't have to be.
Very charitable. Maybe if like the people who made it had a different attitude, but anyway, that's a different
discussion.
That's a whole different thing.
Yeah. But like stuff like Fate Stay Night finally coming out in English, and
Tsukihime.
yeah, and just like God, all the games that like Axis has been putting out over the years, like Steins Gate, Psychopaths, all this kind of like just pure visual novels coming out and getting like retail space and stuff. I think
most of which were
999
bolstered by actual good anime adaptations, I would imagine.
Yeah, a little of that too, but I think like after 999 came out, and it really did make a big impact. Like that was one of those games that like kind of came out very quietly and then like hit, and then it was getting like reprints with different cover art, and it got ported to like mobile, and then like Steam eventually.
I think they changed the last puzzle according to somebody. So
yeah, it was like that game hit and like broke out of a barely existent niche, and I think like I said, like it opened floodgates in a way that I really like appreciate that game for.
Yeah, I got recommended to it back on the DS by a friend who said it was like his favorite game on the DS, and that was like probably one of the best games on the DS that I didn't get around to playing. Yeah, and besides, the best game on the DS is The World Ends With You, Fight Me. So
oh man.
But yeah, no, I'm glad I finally got around to this, and it did definitely scratch the itch and shine a bit of light on why I do or don't like certain games as much. But overall, like, it's just, I suppose, like, the characters themselves are like, they're relatively tropey. You kind of know what you're getting going in, but they're still executed well, performed well. I listened to the English dub, and it was very good. Sean Chiplock as the lead character, always a plus. Cam Clark is a bit part getting exploded very early on, always a plus.
Big Cam Clark appearance.
Absolutely. But yeah, just a really solid experience, and thoroughly enjoyed it. as you know, tropey and relatively straightforward as the characters were, they still performed well, interspersed well. I still felt it. I still vibed with it. I was still curious to see what the fuck was going on and how it was going to end. And I think I arranged it in just the right way to get every possible bad ending before I could actually tackle everything. So it's like, cool, I'll just get, I got my completion basically in a pretty streamlined way, I think, with very little need to go back and forth. So that was good.
Nice.
And yeah, just the final twist and ending part and the final route is like, mwah, excellent,
So
fantastic. Really, really well handled. So I had a good time. 999.
The final door. Like when you see what's beyond the final door, it's just like, oh my god. So good.
That's so good.
One of my favorite parts is like the endings having the little icons when you go back and keep track of it, and then
The
ones
knife.
like the knife, yeah.
That was the first one I got, just the knife.
Yeah.
Was it the one by the submarine bay or whatever? That was the first one I got.
It's the first one most people get, yeah.
I think the submarine one is the axe. Oh no, there's a submarine one which is its own picture. The axe is on the left path, I think. Anyway, but the knife was the first one I got, which is funny because it's the one that tells you the least about who actually killed you in that moment.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm still no closer to figuring it out. And I was like, all right, fuck, all right.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's really, really good.
Yeah.
Anyways,
There was
play this
also
DS
one
game.
Absolutely. I will also say I'm proud of myself because there was one little detail that is dropped very early on and becomes very relevant later on. But I spotted it immediately. I'm like, and I was just waiting like half the game for it to come up. And when it did, I'm like, there it is. Yeah.
Nice.
It's always nice when you have the savviness to actually spot this shit ahead of time. So
nice. I'll have to ask you what that is later after the show.
The left arm.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
999. Go check it out.
Definitely. All right. What do we want to talk about next? Do we want to talk about Dynasty Warriors? Do we want to talk about Crimson Desert?
I want to hear about both these things at some point.
Will, what's your call?
Well, I'm the one who can talk about Crimson Desert, so I can also talk about Dynasty Warriors. So I think we should talk about Dynasty Warriors first because Lucas can also talk about it.
All right.
Oh my god.
Makes sense. Tell me about Dynasty Warriors 10/0/whatever.
Dynasty Warriors Origins, which I'm not convinced is Dynasty Warriors 10.
Dynasty Warriors Zero Gens. Zorigins?
Yeah.
Zorigins?
Uh-oh, we're getting to the made up title numbering system thing.
Dynasty Warriors subtitle.
Yeah. So I think the way they are presenting this is it's not actually like a, I don't know, core Dynasty Warriors game. So I think technically it exists in the land of spinoffs, even though it really doesn't seem it when you're playing it.
That's probably just them covering their asses.
There might be hedging, yeah.
They're hedging their bets, given that 9 went so badly and was a piece of shit that damn near killed the entire subgenre for me. So yeah.
And they're also trying something new that inherently takes multiplayer completely out of the equation. Which I think that's where like the hedging really comes in, because like that's a really big thing to take out of a
people like their co-op split screen, etc.
Yeah. So the central thing, I guess, with this game is it's like it is Dynasty Warriors, so it's retelling the Three Kingdoms thing again, but it's zooming in a lot closer. So it is ostensibly taking itself more seriously, which we'll get into. But it's like you are this character, and you're a character that exists outside of everything else. So you're kind of there to be like an audience surrogate to like observe things, and that's kind of their way to be like, okay, we can tell the story from a more outside angle, without like, directly involving you in it, I guess. So it can be like, oh, here's the three homies from the beginning getting together, and you're not playing as one of them, so you can like interact with all three of them from the outside, so on and so forth. And aside from that, the other big thing is like it's just got this different, uh, I don't know, cadence to it, I guess. The Some of it's kind of superficial, like the camera zoomed in a little more. It's a little to the side, so it's like almost looks
Everything
more
is
like a
Resident Evil 4. It's not quite Resident Evil
yeah.
4, but yeah.
It's like
Yeah,
somewhere in
modern God
between.
of War kind of thing.
Yeah, like it's not that far zoomed in, but it's still like if you're used to Dynasty Warriors, you'll notice. Um, so it's like the visual fidelity is a lot higher. It doesn't give off arcade vibes nearly as much as any other games. It's really interested in kind of like being, I don't know, a serious video game. Like gag saying that, but I think that's kind of the
It,
vibe they're going for.
it almost feels like a good attempt at what they kept doing in the fucking 7th gen with the dark, gritty, edgy reboots, your Bomberman Zero and shit like that.
Oh my god, Bomberman
Almost, yeah.
Zero,
Like
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, you
like
didn't
not.
expect to hear that game today, did you?
No.
Oh my god. Yeah, not quite to that level, but kind of a
He's
similar
not your daddy's
approach.
Bomberman.
Yeah. One of the ways that kind of make it feel different is like it's zoomed in, so you can't see as much. And then like the enemies are a lot more aggressive in general, even like the grunts, which is really effective to me because like you run into your first group, and they kind of have this like charge gimmick where it's like you're kind of going down this like choke point almost into a group off in the distance, and it's like it deliberately cuts off your peripherals, so you're really just charging into this group of enemies to make it look like it's like you're charging into a battle sequence or whatever. But then like you'll go into this group and like they'll just be like poking at you and taking pot shots, and like your screen turns red, like typical video game damage thing, but just like constantly from these like little guys that would normally just kind of like stand there and like wave their spear at you or whatever in the older games. But
Very
this time they're just
ineffective,
like
yeah.
they're actually, yeah, and they're like shooting at you with bows and arrows from, and it's not like actually hitting you that hard. You're not like in trouble generally. But it's just like the game demonstrates danger in a way that they didn't really before. So like if you're not really paying attention, it it like enhances the tension kind of inherently, and it's interesting in that way. Um, and then like when an officer comes up, that you actually are in trouble because these guys actually will like square up with you, and you really have to like get out of the way or block or parry or what have you, whatever the situation demands to like get through these guys. There's no like cheesing through them really. Um, and the game's like a lot less generous with like filling up your meter, so you're going to be using your muso attacks much less frequently. Um, so it's just kind of like I keep wanting to say zoomed in. I think like zoomed in, like literally zoomed in, like figuratively, like it's very, it's like a meteor kind of experience. Um, and then like all the weapons are different, so that's kind of like for me as someone who plays a ton of these games, like the big differences is like the perspective aspect of it, the like danger of it, and then the controls. So like you start with a sword and it's Dynasty Warriors. Hit square 2 times and then triangle, or 3 times and then triangle, and that's the difference between like your crowd control attack and your like singular damage,
Yeah.
whatever. And this one, it's like, okay, here's your spear, and you're mostly going to be hitting triangle a bunch of times, and you have like one crowd control thing, and it's like really hard to do. Or like you've got your gauntlets, and you're like switching stances, and like you have to press different buttons that you wouldn't use otherwise. Or there's like fans that have an entirely different, like all the controls and properties and like rules are different based on what weapon you have equipped, which is like really different from any other Dynasty Warriors. So it was like really interesting to actually be like, oh, I got a new weapon. I'll actually like sit there and see what it does and how it works and try it out. Which even in some of the other creative ones based on anime or whatever, they all still kind of like follow the same rules. But this one is really like just playing with the formula like on the ground level in ways that I thought were really interesting. But despite all this interesting, cool gameplay stuff, I did
And
mention
it is
that
interesting and cool gameplay.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump in for a second and be like, this might be the best Dynasty Warriors has ever played.
It's
I think
definitely
it
the most
is,
like
actually.
it's the most like I don't know. It definitely has more variety. Like I don't know if
Yeah.
it's the best playing in terms of like some of them just really like the ceiling for what you can get away with is so much higher. So it's like more fun in a different kind of way. But
As
this one
far as a
really thinks,
serious, I hate that word at this point, but yeah,
yeah,
a serious action game, I suppose.
I think it is the
sounds a bit
most
more.
challenging one.
it thinks about what it actually wants you to be doing with your buttons, I think, moment to moment more. You know, it like wants to keep you more honest. It wants
It's a
to
more
like
deliberate
like you said,
experience.
it's a challenge.
As opposed to being very arcadey, just kind of,
Yeah,
fucking
it's not
kill them
like
all, just cleave through them, power fantasy,
yeah,
the
like in Fire
fastest.
Emblem Warriors, I can like indefinitely juggle dudes until I decide I'm done. You know,
Yeah,
you can't in this one. So it's like a different, but yeah.
I do enjoy Fire Emblem Warriors.
Yeah, sorry, I cut you off. I don't know if you want to transit. I was gonna like just completely give it to you to talk about the story, but if you wanted to complete your thoughts on the, I didn't mean to like cut you off.
No, it's good. I think the interesting thing about it is like, on the one hand, if people were like, should I play Dynasty Warriors Origins? I'd be like, yeah, it's a
Yeah,
pretty good action game. You should play it. On the other hand, if someone was like, what do you think of it? I'd be like, boy, it steps on a lot of narrative rakes.
yeah. The
So
story is more serious, and it, you know, steps on its own foot in doing that at the same time.
yeah, it's so like the problem with video games, right? And this is not
Here
all
we
video
go.
games, but
I'm
like the
ready. I'm
problem with
ready.
a lot of video games, especially mainstream video games, is boy do you do a lot of killing, right? Like, man, you kill a lot of people. Okay, Dynasty Warriors, you kill a fuckload of people. Like you like swing your big ass spear and 100 people die, and it's like, look at this shit, look how amazing you are, and you're like, all right, cool. I mean, that's fun, right? Like, you know. But the problem with it is Dynasty Warriors Origins frames itself as like more serious, more down to earth. Like you're getting close to the characters and getting to know them, and then it's also like, but also like you are a god made flesh who will decide the future of China, but also you are a guardian of peace
Guardian of
and
Peace in
guardian of
capital
peace.
letters.
Yeah, all caps, proper noun. And the problem is you can't be a guardian of peace while you're an agent of like slaughter, and that's what you do. Like there is no choice to like. I've written about this pretty extensively at Shack News, so if anybody wants to read like my full thoughts on this, it's over there. But the thing is, the game starts off during the Yellow Turban Rebellion, and the
As is
first thing
tradition.
and the first thing you do is save a kid from getting cut down by a government official who wants to help his dad because the government officials are stealing all the food.
Yep.
And this is literally the thing that kicks your whole character's business off, is this moment of like you step in. At time skip, yellow turbans are bad for whatever reason, right? It's never really talked about, it's never really explained.
You miss it.
Now join up with Cao Cao and all these dudes, right? All the boys from the Dynasty Warriors games.
Cal's crazy, man. That guy's just like, these people are dogs, and we need to put them down because they broke
Yeah, yo,
laws.
for real. He's actually
That
kind
guy
of
is
like,
not fucking around.
He's never portrayed as the good guy, but this sounds like it's just like, whoa.
Yeah, and
He's
it's
like RoboCop.
yeah, this man is like, listen, stealing is the exact same thing as murder, and we need to kill both the people who do this. And you're like, I'm not about that one. So anyway, so you get pulled into this conflict, and the moment the game broke for me, like I had this beforehand, right? Where it's like you're going through and you're like, it's impossible not to, especially now, right? Like in the age that we are in, to be like, look at the yellow turbans and be like, they're right, actually. Like we can argue about like some of them went the wrong way, they made some mistakes, but like by and large, as an ideology, they're right. You don't have the option to do anything about that. War of the Three Kingdoms has to be happening, baby, which means they gotta die, which means you gotta kill them. And so the first act of the game is like Yellow Turban Rebellion, and so you're doing all this, and you're like, it's kind of fucked up. Cow's talking about eugenics again. It's kind of fucked up. And
this big bearded boy is just like, power is the only thing that matters, and you're like, oh,
yeah,
okay,
yeah. And the
now
conflict
let me train
of
you for extra experience points.
right, yeah, let me train you for extra experience. And the funny thing is the game like undercuts itself with the way the game plays, because you're like, wait, why am I doing this? And then it's like, oh, but like you're the Guardian of Peace, you have to do this. And it's like, I think my best option would be to opt out, actually. But I can't do that. And the funny thing is, like, you are set up to be this like literal god made flesh, basically, where like the shit you can do literally alters the way the battles go. Like everyone's like constantly being like, we couldn't have done it without you, and they literally couldn't have. If you're playing it, it's like, nah, you guys would be dead. 100% you'd be dead.
It's literally a supernatural thing that it's like we wanted to distance you from anything actually happening, but we also couldn't help ourselves but to make you a special boy.
Yes, you are
And it just
mommy special
backfires.
boy ad infinitum. And like in the Madden depth chart starting position, you are mommy special boy. You are the starter. And so you're doing, and I say mommy special, like you can't choose the gender of your character. You are a dude. And as you're doing this, like between missions, you have the ability to like, it's an incredible moment of like a game not understanding the messages that it's sending you. Like you can walk around between cities where you are literally a giant striding around between cities, right? Occasionally overhearing the little people talk, while the other giants, who are the other lore important characters, are sitting there waiting to train you in like the next weapon, right? And you're like, I understand what you guys are trying to do here, because this is like the FF7 map, you know, and all the other like Final Fantasy map. I get it. But also, I don't think you thought about how this looks if I thought about it for 10 seconds. Where you are literally just like striding across the world, everything bends to you, but simultaneously, you have no ability to alter basically anything that happens. Occasionally, it's like, what should we do? Oh, I will side with this person. Oh, okay. Right? But like functionally, like you are a god that is being pointed and wielded by like these lore important characters to solve a problem. In the review, I wrote that you are basically a gun, that they aim at things and you kill them. And it comes to a head for me like at the end of the first act, basically, when you get a letter from the kid that you saved in the beginning, and he's like, hey, you're my hero, thank you, also I'm a yellow turban now, and the only reason I get to do this is because you saved my life, and now I get to fight for what I believe in. And I've seen you on the battlefield, and I know that you're probably going to kill me, but I don't care. Still got to say thank you. And you're just sitting here like, wow, this fucked up. And there's nothing you can do about it because you are a gun. You are a weapon made to be wielded by men in power, and you have to do it because you are a guardian of peace, and the only way to achieve peace is to kill everybody that could stand in the way of there being peace.
Except, unlike Mech Warrior or Spec Ops, this game isn't trying to say anything about that.
No.
It does not have the self-awareness.
No, it's completely oblivious to this. And it is the most fucked up narrative framing I think I've ever seen in a video game.
Damn.
Where it is completely oblivious to the things that it is asking you to do. And it's like, bruh, you cannot send me a letter from and I'm sitting there reading the letter for the kid. I'm sitting there playing the game and I'm like, if I haven't killed him already, because the function of mail, right, must take time to travel, I will kill him in the next battle. Because it's the end of the Yellow Turban Rebellion.
And you're not going to know.
And you're not going to know. You're not even going to realize it.
He's not going to have an officer, flag or a health bar or anything like that.
No, he's going to be a dude. And you cut through them like they're nothing. Because
Which is in a different game, the fact that you wouldn't know would be great. The fact that you would be like, I may have already killed him, or I may kill him in the next battle, and I just don't know. If the game hangs a hat on the fact that you don't know, or not that, but like,
or if it asks a
if
question,
they leave
or the character
room for you to
sits and
think
thinks
about that,
it.
that would be great. It's just like, goddamn, like every one of these people was one of those people.
Yeah.
Every person I have put down is one of these people who had a mom or a dad that I maybe saved in another thing.
Right, and it doesn't remark on that at all. The most it does is send you the letter, which, to the credit of the person who wrote the letter is well written. But when you compare that to what the game asks you to do and the way it turns that into gameplay, when you cut down like 1,000 pieces, like you're a true hero of the Three Kingdoms. Well, A, the Three Kingdoms doesn't fucking exist yet, and B, like, no, man, I am an instrument of mass death. Like,
as a small green man once said, wars not make one great.
Yeah, it's literally the Jedi problem of like, we are keepers of the peace, not soldiers.
Yeah.
Are you though? Like, you look an awful lot like soldiers to me, bro.
If you ignore the prequels, it works.
Right, and it's the same problem. It's literally the same problem of like, this is what we believe. It's like, you can't, you know, like the act of doing what you do completely destroys this. And the game doesn't comment on it. I don't expect Dynasty Warriors to be that smart. I don't expect a lot of the people who are playing about it or writing about it to come at it from that perspective. But I was so emotionally, like, I don't know what the word is, dumbstruck by that letter. As someone who was already like, this is fucked up. And like coming out of that letter, I was like, I'm a monster, actually. And the game is not going to comment on it.
Nope.
And that's fine.
It's just going to keep patting you on the back because it's still Dynasty Warriors, and this feels like a horribly shoehorned attempt at telling a more serious story without changing any of the framework
gameplay
of Dynasty Warriors.
Yeah, like how does Dynasty
stick
Warriors
to the arcades, bro?
Yeah, like
it's really dishonest.
And the fucked up part is like the act of playing the game is good.
So fun.
Like, and again, this is what I wrote on Checkers. Like, you can read the whole thing if you want, but like, I ended it by talking about like the fucked up part. The most fucked up part is, as I'm doing the move that is gonna kill that kid, it's gonna feel good.
Yeah,
it's gonna feel good, and that is just. We love all the killing. That's why. Like, it is so fundamentally baked into how so many games operate that the instant you try to tell a more serious story, it undercuts itself because all you do is kill.
It's the Last of Us 2 problem.
It's the same problem. It's like, oh man, isn't this bad? It's like, you are forcing me to do this. This is the system you have designed.
And if you keep telling me killing is bad, why did you make it so much fun to do?
Right. And at the very least, have the Spec Ops awareness or the Metal Gear awareness of like, hey, you need to reckon with the shit that you do. It's not good, actually. Right? And like, we don't get that anymore. And the fact that they thought like, on the one hand, I respect them for trying to tell a more serious story and being like, Dynasty Warriors can be, narratively interesting. Okay, cool, thank you. However,
it's cool because like the yellow turbans is usually just like a silly little like level 1 thing, and it's like, oh,
it's
this
like the first level, and they're goofies with a mage in the background.
Yeah, the wizard man, and here it's like 6 or 7 levels, and it's several hours, and it's like, man, this is interesting. Except it's still, even though it like takes its time and sits there, and it's like, we're here to make this, let the story breathe. They still like all of the actual interesting stuff happens off screen, and it's still just like, they're bad now. Take our word for it.
Right, and like, you are presented as the most powerful character in any given room that you are in.
Yeah.
Because you can literally see through sorcery and like bird's eye view the battlefield and be like,
yeah,
oh, you guys are getting killed by mooks that don't actually exist. It's a good thing I can dispel that shit, and you can't. But Like, it makes you all powerful and then gives you no agency at all.
Yeah.
And it's just
the only power you have is the power to kill, which is that's not power.
Yep.
Or to turn the game off and stop.
Yeah, it's literally it's the Spec Ops thing, right? It's the stop sign in Spec Ops. Jake Steinberg wrote this really good piece recently about how we confuse story and narrative in games with the written parts, right? And that's all we think of, right? It's the writing, it's the character speaking, it's like story beats, and that is not how games work as a medium. Everything is story. The way that the game presents gameplay to you is story. The act that you take to do the things, that is story, right? That is how the game communicates narrative.
What the camera does is story.
Yeah, literally every part of it is how the game communicates story. This is not a film.
And yet it's a rare game that actually uses every part of the buffalo in telling its story.
Right, and like, even, if we want to like really go back, like, the reason Kojima is a fucking genius is because he's like, what if you plugged your controller into the second controller part? What if we use the fucking hardware to tell a story, right? What if we
use the box?
What if we used
yeah.
Oh man, there's a conceit in storytelling, and I can't remember what it's called, but basically the idea is that when you open a book or when you watch a movie or when you play a game or whatever it is, you go in with the kind of acceptance that you are going to go into this thing and try to understand it, right? You have already decided that. And that you are going to suspend your disbelief a little bit, right? And you're going to try to like honestly engage with the thing. And the problem with the way we do it in games is that we assume that like a lot of the time nothing outside the dialogue or the plot beats or whatever like is actually part of the story that you are engaging with. And it's no, man, the act of holding the controller is also doing it, right? The buttons that you press, it's not, Neil Druckmann had that quote several years ago about like what happens in The Last of Us is like a summary or kind of what might have happened, right? It's not actually what happens, right? It's just kind of like, oh, maybe you didn't actually kill that many people, or the same thing with Uncharted, right? It's just kind of like a thing between you killed some people and then you went to the next one, right? But that's not how hand wave, right?
He runs out of luck if he dies, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Or like Prince of Persia, where it's like, oh, that's not how it happened if you mess up or stuff like that.
That was really clever about how.
Yeah, I thought that was a good way to do it.
Right. That is right, and somehow we've like in the years since, like we've somehow simultaneously convinced ourselves that we're better at storytelling, and B, removed the parts that are like not considered traditional story from our definition of storytelling. And it is infuriating when you play something like Dynasty Warriors Origins, which for the record I think is a good video game, because there are other parts of the video game, right? But like as a medium for delivering a message, it undercuts itself at every turn. And if you think about it for 10 seconds, you're like, wow, this is profoundly fucked up, and nobody thought about this. And it's that fucking bit in Metal Gear Solid 3 where like if you kill a bunch of people, you get to walk through the fucking river and see all the people that you killed, and it sits there and it forces you to do it. And it's the Spec Ops loading screens where like at least we have tried to grapple with this before, that the act of violence is not this harmless thing that just happens, and it is the thing that we do on the way to the next part of the story, and it doesn't matter. And no game has ever thrown that in my face as hard as Dynasty Warriors has. Maybe Spec Ops, but unintentionally.
Yeah, it does really unintentionally. It is so like I didn't really, when I reviewed it, touch on this at all. Part of my excuse is that I was very sick that week. But I also like, as someone who plays all these games and has certain expectations, it sort of has like the vibe kind of baked in. Like I found myself being like, oh, this is kind of shallow, and then just sort of like tuning it out to a certain degree. So like all my initial response is like, oh, this is kind of interesting how they're like trying to, take more time with things, but it doesn't actually say anything anyways. And so I kind of like, I had caught myself taking it for granted. which I think also is very damning for like the like actual substance of what is there. Um, because like yes, it's like contradicting itself constantly, but it's not even like Will said, it's like not even doing it with a lot of like intent. It just sort of like it feels like they threw a dart at a board for their like their setup for the protagonist, and we're like, oh, okay, he's like a war ghost. Cool, what's wrong with that? You're the war ghost, and then like everything that happens with respect to your character is just kind of like barely written nonsense that the game kind of like it's like, ooh, you're the war ghost, and then it just immediately moves on, and it's just this really, really, uh, like
Shallow.
it's like, yeah, it's like so shallow. It's almost impressive that they landed so poorly, if that makes sense.
So
Yeah,
not only
it's
did they fail to understand just how profoundly fucked up what they were suggesting is in trying to take a serious story, but it's also just badly executed and boring.
Yeah,
yeah, it is the not to like jump over Lucas, but Lucas, you know how in those RPGs, right, where like you get to make a choice in dialogue, but the choice doesn't fucking matter at all, and you get to the
yeah.
same dialogue option regardless. That's every dialogue option almost.
It's the classic Dragon Quest. Will you help me as the king to save the kingdom? Yes, no. And then you click no, and he's like,
But
surely thou
thou
jest.
must.
Yeah,
Yeah, and like your choices are largely like flavor text, where it's like you can be sassy, but it doesn't matter if you're sassy, right? Like the character might have like a line about you're kind of sassy, but it's never like it's never
that's
like a
it. Yeah.
larger part of the narrative, right? It's just kind of like in that moment, do you want to be sassy or not?
You're just like
And
going through motions of like video game dialogue.
yeah,
Yeah.
and like you have these, when you first meet the characters and like you build your bond with them or whatever, and it's like, oh, like I just wanted to meet you, blah blah blah. Like none of these conversations matter. It's just like the setup of like now we are doing the mechanic part, right? And again, this is not a million games do this. This is not like to specifically throw Dynasty Warriors under the bus, because again, I think like there's a pretty decent action game under there actually, and if you can just tune out or at least be cognizant of like, wow, this is fucked up, but I want to play the game, like you have an enjoyable time. But I also think it's like really damning in terms of the way we think about stuff and the way we write about stuff and the way that we critique things, because we don't talk about this stuff as much as we should, right? And it's like, oh, game good, also story more like in depth, they took put more effort into it, therefore game better,
Yeah.
like without understanding that these systems interact with each other and that you can't, this is not like I don't want my peas to touch my squash casserole at Thanksgiving. Like
No,
these
the peas
things are
in the
mixed.
casserole.
They're
Yeah,
already touching.
you cannot remove them. Like they are intertwined. This is a holistic
The
thing.
stuffing is in the turkey.
Yeah, you can't take it out, right? Even if you could, right? Like it's already been in there. It's already done the thing that it's supposed to do. And it is bonkers to me that we don't talk about things like this more, right? And this is not just a Dynasty Warriors thing. This is a larger issue, right? Where like we talk about Astrobot. It's like Astrobot is a great platformer. Astrobot is a fucking Funko Pop game.
Yep.
Like it is a celebration of nostalgia, hidden in a very good platformer, right? But that functionally changes how you approach it. You cannot remove that. Of like, hey man, isn't it fun to rebuild the PS5 corporate branded approved platformer? Like, guys.
Hey, remember the Bloodborne guy? He parries you if you try to hit him.
Yeah,
Isn't that great?
Like it's a whole game of member berries, and like that does not take away, again, in the same way that the story failings of Dynasty Warriors do not take away from the good parts of the gameplay. But like those things are their own thing, and you can acknowledge them in a vacuum. But when you are playing the video game, they do not exist in a vacuum.
Right.
They are connected. Right? They are a part of the experience. They are the whole thing. In the same way that you can criticize The Last of Us for being like, isn't violence bad, while forcing you to kill nonstop. At no point do you get the version of like, hey, you know what? Maybe I should stop. Maybe the best thing to do would be to walk away.
Even Undertale got that right.
Yeah, or like, Spec Ops, which at least involves the player and says, you are here because you wanted to be. This is your fault. You made a choice, and you didn't stop, and you were told to stop. You didn't do it. You wanted to be a hero. This is your fault.
You feel like a hero yet? Are you having fun yet?
Yeah. Like, are you having fun yet, right? Like, this is what you wanted, right? But none of this is acknowledged, and it's not just a Dynasty Warriors problem. It is a problem that is wholesale across the whole business, where we view these things as separate things that come in the same package. It's like, oh man, like look how nice the liner notes are on this album, and then the music. And you can separate them because they don't interact at all, right? Like they're completely different things. It's just a nice little extra thing, story on top of gameplay. But that's not how this works. It's never been how this works. It's not Dynasty Warriors is not the only game with this problem. Lucas and I have talked about Metaphor, like with similar stuff like this. Like this. We can do better. We can do better.
I get it.
Yeah.
I completely get it.
Picard facepalm meme.
We can do better. I'm sorry, that was probably way off topic, but like this bothers me.
No, I fucking love it. I'm right there with you, as I'm sure you understand. Like
Yeah, I mean,
you're not the only one who spotted this shit. You're just the one who speaks about it the most passionately here. Like I agree completely with everything you just said.
I mean, this is why games like well-crafted visual novels with puzzle elements, or other games that have numbers in the title that we're going to talk about a lot soon, or insert here, like there's a reason why the broadening of genres and the proliferation of things like cozy games and stuff is good. It's not just so that there are more different ways of doing things. It's that it kind of decentralizes gaming as a medium so that more people will come to associate it not just with the act of killing.
Right.
Yeah.
And like I think a game that's done this pretty well. I mean, there's still a lot, like you still fight a lot, but like the Indiana Jones game Kira's been playing, and I've been watching her play it. You don't fire a gun a lot.
Yeah.
And if you go back, and even like honestly, the combat sections are really not that long or really not that crazy, right? And for the most part, they're hand-to-hand fighting where you knock a dude out, right?
Yeah.
And it's actually like a really brilliant translation of the films, where if you go through and you were to watch, just as an experiment, let's just take the original 3 films, Raiders, Temple of Doom, and Last Crusade, and you were to count how many times Indiana Jones fires a gun.
It's not many.
It's not very many. I think you can count it on maybe 2 hands across all 3 films.
In fact, they hang their hat on that in Last Crusade when he uses one of the German pistols, the Mauser, and shoots through like 5 guys. But that's like the one time he shoots in like that whole stretch.
And the most memorable time where he does fire a gun is done purely for laughs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was unscripted, right? And like, but like if you go through Raiders, like he doesn't. I think it happens maybe just the one time. I really I'm struggling to think of another point in Raiders where he shoots at somebody. Yeah. Right, and it's just not how Indy is, because Indy is not that kind of film.
He's a professor.
And so like to play. Yeah,
he's a professor up against Nazis. Yeah.
Like he wins because he's smarter than they are, and Nazis are dumb, right? Like, and the game is really good about like, hey, we're gonna give you a revolver. It carries 6 bullets. You're not gonna find a lot of bullets. It takes forever to reload. So if you need to rely on the revolver, you had better need to do it in a position where there's like 2 guys at most, or you are dead already. Yeah. Like you fucked up to get into that situation, which is very much like, yeah, that's Indiana Jones, man, right? But like to have a game that is AAA game, big budget, major IP, that is like, hey, like you can't shoot people, it's probably a really bad idea.
And
Right?
made by
Because that
Machine
is-
Games, who do great fucking shooters.
Yeah, like that is the basis of like the series as a whole. Where like, you know, we talk about like, yeah, Indiana Jones is great at punching Nazis. He is. They didn't kill him very much, like directly, right? Like never like, you know, if they get killed, it's usually because like, oh, they were fighting and they got thrown off the tank or whatever, right? Like it's something like that. It's never like he's sitting there like BJ Blazkowiczing through him with like a chainsaw.
Yeah.
And that's an intentional decision that sells the character and sells the game and sells the world about this is the way things operate.
Yeah.
And I wish more games were more cognizant of how their systems tell a story, because they do, and how the systems impact the story that we are getting through dialogue and through all those other things.
That's a huge reason, like, just to kind of put a bow on what you're saying, Will, that's a huge reason why the characters of Nathan Drake and Lara Croft and Indiana Jones are so different. Like, on paper, they go up against evil people to save ancient artifacts and things, but like the reasons for them doing it are different. The way that they go about it and the degree to which they engage in violence are all wildly different. There's a reason that you can say Indiana Jones is a good man. You cannot say that about Nathan Drake.
No, he's a mass murderer. There's no other way around it, and he does it because he wants money.
Yeah,
right. Like that's the character.
Indy isn't a treasure hunter. He says it belongs in a museum.
Yeah,
which I mean, we can go into like what that means for like, you know, that's a different discussion.
Yeah, but it's also like, you know,
he's still a boomer.
It's set in the 30s, right? Like it's a different time period. And that counts too. And Laura, for, you know, people forget this, but the early Tomb Raider games, you didn't shoot people.
Yeah, you shot animals and dinosaurs.
You shot animals and dinosaurs. It was a very conscious decision on the parts of the developers that you were not going to be shooting people. And then, when you did start shooting people, the moral calculus of should I shoot this person was extremely, like, you know,
it was a big deal.
Yeah,
she like kills the guy and she's like vomiting afterwards. They make it, yeah.
Well, that was in the reboot.
In the Crystal Dynamic reboots, yeah.
Yeah.
The reboot immediately goes into fumbling that. It's like, yeah, it makes a big deal of it later, and then later on she's got a grenade launcher and is pumping it into these running crowds.
Well, she's pretty upset at that point, to be fair.
Yeah, in fairness.
And that becomes a thing with Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then like
she becomes Rambo and it's painted as a bad thing.
Yeah, right? Like, A, she's deeply traumatized as a character, right? Like,
yeah.
B, she's thrown into a position where, like, Nathan Drake could literally just stop at any point. Yeah. He could literally just be like, you know, I don't want to do this no more. Laura is never in a position where it's like, I want to do this anymore, right?
She can't stop or she gets murdered. Yeah.
Yeah. Because she's trapped somewhere or there's a big thing, like, you know, happening. And Kira and I have this saying about, you know, I think it's appeared in the podcast a few times, like, I need to understand the moral framework in which I operate. The moral framework in which I operate in the Crystal Dynamics Tomb Raider games is pretty black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Laura does bad things sometimes. The other guys are going to do way worse stuff. At no point are you ever sitting there like, maybe Laura shouldn't be killing these people. No. Not
these
ever.
people are all monsters.
Yeah,
these people are monsters. Yeah, like this, you know, right? But like, to Brian's point, like that's a really good, between those three people, that's a huge difference where Indy largely doesn't kill people. Definitely doesn't shoot them. Laura does in certain iterations of Tomb Raider, but there is generally a good reason. And even like if you guys watch the Netflix anime, which I think is pretty good, like by and large, she doesn't really kill anybody. Right? Like it's a lot of like fist fighting. Like when the guns come out, it's a big deal. And even then, she really doesn't kill that many people. It's like kind of like a last resort, do this if we have no other options scenario. Whereas Nathan Drake
Damn, Sonic, I think we're going to have to kill this guy.
Yeah, Nathan Drake is like, listen, man, that thing is shiny and gold. Here's my AK-47. Let's go, bitch. You know, and like that is the moral framework in which Uncharted operates. You are a treasure hunter, and it doesn't matter. You know, like he's funny. Okay, cool. Like we used to have conversations about this shit, and now it's just kind of like, Don't you love how fun the video game is?
Yeah.
Don't you think the writing is better? I don't know, man. If I remove everything that is not the dialogue, sure. The writing is better, but that's not how games are. That's not how they work.
This game has themes. List them out. Like, here's the 3 themes this game has. And it's like, okay, and
They're there.
Right?
They exist.
And how many times have we all read or watched some YouTuber or whatever where it's like, the game has good, writing because it deals with blah.
It's like, okay, but what does it have to say about that?
No,
What does it have to say about you? Don't get points for being at the bus stop.
Yeah.
You have to drive the
you
bus
have to
also.
take the bus somewhere. Oh man. The Last of Us gets points for going to the bus stop. It thinks about getting on a Greyhound. And like
Yeah, I could go on about Last of Us. Even the first one.
Let's not. But the point the point is, and I didn't want to take this whole conversation and turn into this whole big thing, but like
it's been fun.
Games you tell stories in a lot of ways, many of which, almost all of which actually are out of the control of the player if you just play the game, right? And the way in which you interact with those systems that the developers have designed for you to interact with, and the way that interacts with what they're telling you in the dialogue and in the story and in the plot beats, they either work together or they don't. And the difference is a game that manages to deliver on said theme that you can just list or not. And I can't tell you how many games that I've played in the last couple of years that have been like, we're deep because we talk about X. And it's like, really? Are you? Sure doing a lot of killing between X. No one is remarking on all the killing.
Yeah.
You're just a libertarian power fantasy, Commander Shepard.
Wouldn't it be great if the solution to all the galaxy's problems were unaccountable super cops?
And when there's a bad super cop, we just throw a different super cop at them.
Then the way to take him down is another super cop. We don't like your method, Shepard, but you get results. Like, what are we doing here?
Why are people trying to take RoboCop seriously? Why?
Yeah.
I have a long answer to that question, but I don't think it's conducive to the discussion we're having right now. Can I talk about Crimson Desert now?
Sure.
Yeah, did we want to cover that? I know we've been going for over 2 hours.
I can do this quickly.
Yeah?
All right.
Sure.
Yeah. So at the Game Awards, I got to play Crimson Desert. I haven't talked about it on the podcast until now because I kind of forgot initially, which is not in any way an indication of that game, what I played. So Crimson Desert is kind of like an action RPG, but I think it's more like traditional action game. And the way I played it was I got to fight 3 bosses in this demo that was about 45 minutes long. And I was my dude. I had like a sword and board set up. And I got to fight a fast dude. I got to fight a witch crow lady and like a gimmick fight, basically. Big turtle thing made of rock. And Crimson Desert is really cool. The reasons that it is really... I can't speak to the storytelling because I don't know anything. I just played boss fights. But the way that the game works is that it allows you to be very like proactive as a player in a way that a lot of action games don't anymore. While also allowing you to play very reactively. Like the fast guy, you're gonna get hit, but you can tank those hits. And if you're smart, you can be like, okay, cool. When he does this one move that like blade beams at me, I'm gonna jump really high up into the air, boost myself up higher, and hit him with an explosive arrow. Right? It's kind of like Breath of the Wild, but like it just feels better to do things in the same way that like you can RKO that dude. You can like literally suplex him. Like there's a lot of options for the ways that you can approach situations. And I'm playing it for about 2 minutes. I'm in the middle of the first fight, and I'm talking to the developers. And I'm like, "Oh, you play action games?" I was like, "How can you tell?" And they're like, "I can hit myself." Like, right? Yeah, this is what I like to do. And I think the thing that really stuck out to me was it's really pretty. Like I think we're in the era now where like games with budgets will never not look good anymore. I think we hit that era in like 2010 maybe. where they still look good, right? You can go play Gears 3, it still looks good. But it looks really great, and it does like really smart action game things. And what I mean by that is it's at one point I was fighting the witch, and the witch likes to teleport. And I could tell where she was gonna be when she teleported because there's a little tell. It's very subtle, like it's extremely subtle. Like she's gonna show, and I asked him, "Is that intentional?" Yes. Okay, cool. So now I can play this match the way that I want, or this match. It's not a fighting game, but like this encounter the way that I want to, but that I'm rewarded for noticing these little things, right? Where I'm rewarded for being like, oh, I can just go up in the air when she does this, or I can do this thing when this guy tries to hit me from this far away, or like, hey, this part of the encounter is actually going to challenge me to not fight the boss and go like deal with the totems that he set up, right? Or hey, you know, the witch is going to summon like a million mobs, and if I try to kill them all, she's just going to kill me, so I kind of like have to cleave my way through them and then actually go fight her, right? And I think what's cool about that is like a lot of modern action games are very like, I don't want to dunk on From Software games. Like a lot of modern action games are very much like, I am a Souls game. I have a light attack and a heavy attack, and I'm going to wait for the opponent to do their big swing, and I'm going to dodge, and then I'm going to do light attack, light attack, light attack, light attack, and then they're going to do their big swing, and I'm going to dodge, light attack, right? Or I'm going to parry, right? And we have somehow gotten away from like, this is a game with mechanics that you as the player have access to, as opposed to like, I'm going to roll and not get hit, and then whack, 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 and then roll and not get whack, 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 right? And that
the
is
expression is
fine.
gone.
The expression, right? The ability for the player to express themselves and to be rewarded for playing intelligently and smartly and recognizing little patterns about like, oh, she's going to be here, right? And really allowing yourself to like play with that in interesting ways. I was talking to friend of the show, Ronnie Barrier, the other day, and we were both kind of talking about like, we're never going to get another action game as good as Ninja Gaiden Black ever again. And we both just kind of come to terms with it. Like, there were a few years there where we were like, maybe. And now it's just like, no, it's never going to happen. No one is ever going to build a game like that again. There's nobody who could, except Itagaki. He's getting old. I don't know if he has the money. You know, maybe he didn't even want to do that anymore. But, like, realistically, there's nobody who could build that game. Itsuno's the only guy who can make Devil May Cry is right now. Okay, he's gone. Like those games don't make money that with Punish the video game, which is what Souls makes, because it's easy to understand. Right? I don't want to get hit, and when I avoid getting hit, I'm gonna whack. So playing Crimson Desert, which is like a new game that is very much like, hey, you know, if he does this move that like hurts really bad, but you catch him during the startup, you can RKO him and stop him from doing that entirely. Is like,
hit him with the diamond cutter. That's so sick.
I can do what? Oh yeah, and then if you could suplex him out of this. Excuse me? Like, I can actually play around this in a meaningful way. I don't just have to dodge. Keep speaking, right? And as I played more of it, like I said, this was about a 45-minute to an hour demo, and I realized like all the things that I could do. I started doing them, and the developers were like, oh, we've never seen anybody do that before. And I was like, seems like the obvious answer. Like, I worry sometimes that we are so focused on, as an industry, like, doing things that people can understand, that we have stopped, like, making things that reward you for being good at them, or, like, exploring or having a personality in the way that you want to approach something.
Reward you for taking the time to understand.
Right. You know, not just being like, I will dodge and then hit you. And I have described, and again, I don't want to dunk on Souls games. I think Souls games are well designed. I really like From as a studio. Anybody who knows me knows this. I've played Armored Core going back to Armored Core 2. Like, I have a lot of respect for that studio. But I think that this idea of, like, there is an answer, there is a right way to do this, and the right way to do this is to dodge roll and not get hit, and then do your big swing, like, really takes away from what makes these games fun. And there's plenty of great action games in the indie game space. I'm not talking about them. Talking about the AAA space. And to like play a game where they had the confidence to be like, yeah, you know, some of these commands are going to have to hold 3 buttons down. We're kind of worried that people might not get it. I'm just like, no, keep that. Keep it. Make them hold those 3 buttons. Right? Like, the joke I made was it's kind of like Darksiders, right? Like, if you played the original Darksiders, you had like 3 buttons to summon your horse, right?
Yeah.
But that's like in combat. And it's like, oh, you have to press like R and then X, and then you can do the RKO. And it's like, that might be a little bit complicated. Keep it.
Yeah.
You're not forcing people to RKO people. I want to RKO people. Let me do it.
There's not one right way to do this, and having your experience
reward the execution.
Yeah.
And so I came out of that demo.
There's been a lot of work done in like raising the floor in action games, but there hasn't been a lot in raising the ceiling.
Yeah, and I think like you see that in terms of not like how your characters can interact with the world, and it's way less fun, right? And I think I speak for everybody. It's way less fun to be in a world where like everybody is cooler than you.
Yeah,
which is what feels like the modern action game in a lot of ways, where everybody is like all the bosses you fight in a Souls game are cooler than you, all of them. Yeah, 100%.
True.
None of the people you fight in Ninja Gaiden are cooler than Ryu. None of them. You are cooler than them. All the same thing with Dante, right?
Yeah.
You are cooler than these bums, and you can do shit that is really cool. That doesn't mean you can't just, they're not going to try to kill you. But that's the other thing, right? Is like these enemies actually wanted me dead. They were not just sitting there waiting for me to like wail on them, which is another thing where it's like, I'm gonna do my big wind up. Please hit me afterwards. It's like, no, we're gonna kill you. Like we're gonna flank you. We're gonna do all this stuff. So I came out of Crimson Desert like extremely high on it, and very much like, this is a game for me. Someone who wants to be, have access to the cool stuff, because I don't know about you guys, but like, I'm tired of playing games where my character is basically hamstrung at all times and has to operate within a really certain small framework, which is the reason I liked playing Dynasty Warriors.
I was just about to say that. Literally, I was going to say like this is why I like Dynasty Warriors. Like it's almost like the opposite of what Brian said with like the high ceiling, or sorry, the high floor, low ceiling. Dynasty Warriors is like it gets a lot of crap for being like too easy and like not complicated, but then like the self-expression is like way up here when you like, kind of dig into it.
And 100%. And so like we've brought it full circle, I guess. But like, yeah, Crimson Desert is a game to keep your eye on, and I hope that we will make games that reward you for like trying stuff and having a personality and wanting to be able to do cool stuff. Like, give me sauce. Let me spread that bitch all over that steak. Let me do stuff. So Crimson Desert does that. So keep an eye on that game. I think it comes out at the end of this year, early next year.
So,
I think so.
Late 2025.
Mm-hmm.
So real quick, I looked this up because I couldn't remember if I knew what it was or not, and it's from Pearl Abyss, the Black Desert online people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed recently there's this game. There's the first Berserker Kazan, which is based on Dungeon Fighter Online. There's another action game I can't remember for the life of me. I previewed for Shack News, but it's another like this was or is spun off of a like MMO kind of gimmick.
Yeah.
In some capacity. It seems like a lot of these like MMO Korean MMO things that have been around for a while are like transitioning into big single player games for some reason.
Yeah, they start as the world and then they build out. It's kind of like the inverse of what happened with Warcraft.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like we've seen the live service race kind of backfire on AAA studios over here on the West, and then we're seeing sort of this like opposite movement, at least in a few spots, in these other like MMO spaces. That's kind of fascinating.
I imagine it's a similar situation in Korea, given that they still have like one of the biggest MMO markets. Yeah. I imagine there's just not enough space for all these MMOs, so they go, let's just pivot. Especially when you already have an MMO that is still going and is still successful. Yeah. You don't really want to cannibalize that. It's like, it's why EverQuest still gets updates, but EverQuest 2 does not.
Yeah, the situation is like, well, we have this money, we may as well like make a new video game, but we'll do
And it's the same with gacha games, like shout out to Granblue, right?
Right, yeah.
Great fighting game.
Pretty good action RPG.
Very true.
Yeah.
Not bad.
So yeah, Crimson Desert very cool, and
I'm definitely interested in this game.
I'm excited.
I want to suplex a witch. That sounds awesome.
It is so sick, and I can't wait to play it again. And shout outs to the team at Pearl Abyss for inviting me out there to see that. I really appreciate it. So
Steam's telling me this is similar to games I've played, such as Sonic Frontiers.
Jesus.
No, I'm definitely on board.
I don't understand that comparison at all. Maybe it's because I haven't played Sonic Frontiers. Maybe Frontiers is a better game than my brain thinks it is. But
That's funny.
I don't know.
I mean,
I
certainly,
also think
certainly that would have to be true.
I don't know about that. I don't know about
Just-
that. I don't know if we,
just-
I don't know if we can.
Just by
don't know
definition,
about-
certainly that would have to be true. I have to imagine your bar is like on the floor.
I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can go down this path that I feel like you're trying to lead me down here. I think I must stop for my own health. But I do think it's interesting.
Wait. Hold on. I see a sign right here by this path. It's called the Primrose Path. Oh, interesting. Oh, very interesting. That path sounds really great.
I have
Last
no
time we
idea what that means.
established Sonic Frontiers has aerial raves. Don't forget that.
Oh my god.
I forget that every day. I force myself to forget every day.
Yeah. This is the cheese. This is the mouse's favorite cheese on the trap. And he knows it's a trap, but that is his favorite cheese. Oh,
It's a really nice cheese.
it's tricky.
And
It's
every
tricky.
day the mouse looks at the trap and says, "Not today, old friend."
Not today.
What if you could get the cheese by going really fast?
Not today, Satan. Get thee
Getting
behind me.
Get this shit out of here.
We are bad influences.
I'm gonna have another GNT after this. I'm gonna forget this entire conversation.
All
Not
right.
today,
well,
Brian.
Shall
today.
we get in the great thing about this is I have no horse in this race. I do not care. I'm just advocating for the devil because it's fun.
You are here for the bands.
Yes.
It's just really fun. I wonder how many games I could look up on Steam and see that pop up. I'm curious now.
Is that a tag now? Aerial raves? It should be.
I was talking about Sonic Frontiers, but yeah.
Lucas, this needs to be a Skybox pitch. The 5 games that Steam assures me are what I will like because I like Sonic Frontier.
Yeah.
Just screenshots. Oh my god.
A petition to add a new Steam tag for aerial raves.
Motion carry.
Yeah. Do we have a second? Do we have a third? All right. Shall we get out of here? We've been here for like 2.5 hours.
I think it's a good place to wrap it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for joining us for this episode of the Platformers. I will say, and I know that you're here, dear listener, so you know. But if you're out there and you're not listening to the Platformers, what are you doing? Come on, get real. Next week, we're going to be doing our Game of the Year episode. It's going to have a different format than previous years. We're going to do something that Will, you can give like the rundown right now, just like a really quick rundown of like what it is.
Yep. So what we're going to do is we're all going to come in with lists of our top, whatever. We haven't decided on a number yet. Our top favorite games, right? And then we are going to use those lists to build a Platformers Game of the Year list. So, if we come in with like top 10, we're going to build a top 10. Whatever.
Yeah.
Right. So we're going to start with that many. We're going to cut it down. We're going to debate on why those games should be on that list. We're going to talk about all those games in depth. And the best part about this process is that it lets people talk about their favorite games. And it also forces us to talk about, the things we don't like about them and figure out, how that works. So it's going to be a process. It always is. It's usually a pretty long podcast, but you're going to get a lot of information about a lot of different games. So I hope you'll come out and I hope you guys enjoy it. I find it pretty fun. So stick with us and you'll see it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, Mum Jum in the chat says Game of the Year elimination bracket system.
Basically, yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And I will have on that episode, I am going to have an extra window on the Twitch stream where we will have the current ranking. So everybody will be able to watch that.
Keep track
as we go along. Mm-hmm. Because that's one thing in like some of these things where like I lose track of it and I'm like, what are we talking about? How many games make the playoffs? What we have been talking about is bringing each of our either top 5 or top 10. I'd be fine either way. Top 5 will make for a shorter episode. Top 10 will let us highlight more great games. So that's kind of the trade-off. Do we want to have a longer episode where we highlight more excellence, or do we want to have a shorter episode that's more focused? And I don't really have a preference. So I guess we'll talk about that but it will at least be each of our top 5s. So I guess we'll talk about that off air and then figure that out as we lead in to next week. But yeah, that's what we're going to be doing next week. Right now, I think the plan is just to do it on the regular day, regular time. It'll just go long. But yeah, come back for that. And I'm excited. There's going to be a lot of great game talk. I cannot wait. It's going to be so fun. And it's going to get heated, I imagine, at some points. But
yeah.
I will fight you all for infinite wealth. I will fight you.
You will lose, but you will fight.
But I will go down fighting.
You will go down swinging, my friend.
Never stop fighting.
I respect it. It's a weird hill to die on, but at least you'll be dead, as my friend Will likes to say. Anyways, if you guys like the show, share it with friends or leave us a review. We love talking to all of you. So come find us on social media. You can find me on Blue Sky and Backlogged at Brian Barnett, BrianBarnett. And you can find me on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube at Ribnax, Ribnax. We stream these episodes live Mondays at 7 p.m. Central on Twitch, and then I put the VODs up on YouTube. And yeah, Kris, where can everybody find you?
Hey, I am Kris Cornelise. You can find me across the internet as Delfeir. That's Delfeir. My website is at versusthebacklog.com. That's thebacklog.com, one word. You can find nothing new there yet, again, but more projects coming soon. Big special stuff in the works still, and you can find me here most weeks. Say hi if you see me.
Will, where you at?
Yes. You can find me on Blue Sky at Edgar Allan Bro. You can find me on Twitter. I'm still kind of there occasionally. At Bible Burger. That's Burger with an O, not a U. You can find me on Backlogged, also at Edgar Allan Bro. And as always, you can find my stuff that I'm writing about on Shack News, IGN, and elsewhere. I have a couple of things for IGN in the pipe, and I have a couple of things for Shack in the pipe. So please come see if you'd like to see me write about World of Warcraft. I just did a piece for my first piece of the year was over at Digital Trends, where I talked about how impossible it is to imagine another game released now getting a 20-year anniversary celebration. So that's me. Lucas, where can people find you?
Hey, you can find me on Blue Sky at Hokuto Lucas, being snarky about people without naming them when they say weird things about, the Nintendo Switch or launch absurd eShop replacements, things like that. You can find my writing at Shack News, mostly. Most of my reviews live there, including, I was about to say Dynasty Warriors, but that is actually not true. That's Will's review. The other game I talked about, Blade Chimera. And then some stuff next week. Also a regular newsboy at restart.run. So if you want to see me just sort of telling you that Squid Game is in Call of Duty and Godzilla is in Fortnite without any commentary, you can find that there, I guess. I also reviewed Dynasty Warriors there, so you can find my take there.
Make a double feature of it. Read Lucas's and then read mine.
Yeah, exactly.
Do it.
I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, cool.
I think I have something coming to Kotaku soon. Maybe, I don't know. I feel like it's floating in the ether. But
yeah,
keep us posted.
I've got some stuff that's supposed to go up there. I don't know when it's gonna happen, but yeah. And I didn't share this, but I talked about this earlier during this segment. But my preview for Tempest Rising will be going up on IGN soon, so check that out. From everybody here at the Platformers, we hope you have a wonderful week and stay safe out there. Because until next time, we are out.
Peace.
Peace.
bye.